Yeah. Morning, everyone. Morning, how's it going? Now, just before we start, I wanted to check how many people weren't here yesterday. A few. Housekeeping then. Right. Morning tātou, welcome to Round Here for day 2 of the Going Global Music Summit. It is the 10th Going Global, and we're very happy to be back here, being able to do it in person and spend time with all you lovely people. Some basic housekeeping. If you need a bathroom, there is one straight through in the kitchen here upstairs, one at the bottom of the stairs, and if they are both busy, around in the car park there is a large luxury toilet unit. Much discussed yesterday. Apparently it was blasting the Beatles. So I don't know if I want to hear Get Back when I go to the toilet, but apparently that was going on at some stage yesterday. If you need first aid at all, the production office is by the front door through to Newton Road. You can go in there and people can help you out with a first aid kit. If there's an emergency and we need to evacuate the building, if you're upstairs, please go straight down the hall, out the door onto Newton Road. If you're downstairs, you go out where you came in through registration on the roller door, and we'll all meet outside this building here called the Orange on Newton Road. Please use the rubbish bins today. There are water coolers around so you can refill water bottles and we can keep the plastic lower. And there's hand sanitiser all around the venue. If you're not feeling well, please go home. Sorry about that. At Going Global, we operate as a safe space. We want everyone to be really comfortable. So if for any reason people are making you feel not great or uncomfortable today, just go and see the staff downstairs at registration and they will help you out. Right. We have this pretty great program today, and we have actually been trying to get our first 2 keynote speakers for a long time, so we're very, very stoked to have them here today. We're going to be running different seminars and panels. We will be having our crazy speed networking at the end of the day. We'll explain a little bit more about that, but you got to be ready to run a little. It'll be fine. Going Global is brought to you by Independent Music New Zealand, partnered with the Music Commission, which is where I work, and our sponsors are APRA, AMCOS, New Zealand On Air and Recorded Music. So, before we get any underway, any other questions for the day? Anything you don't know? The last thing to put in your diary is that today we do have the showcase. It's at Whammy and Wine Cellar. There are 3 stages operating, very short 20-minute sets, and you totally should be there for the first one because I think it's going to be something quite special starting at exactly 7 o'clock. We always run on time, so unlike this morning slightly, we will be kicking off exactly on the dot. So, enough from me. I would like to introduce you to, from New Zealand On Air and our broadcaster Sarah Thompson, who will be doing our keynote interview with Joel Little and Ashley Page.
Going Global, Aotearoa, Manaurua, Takomarua. Of course, Sarah, I hope. It's really lovely to be here with you today. And I feel like it's a pretty special thing to have both of these people on stage with me. I feel like this is a pretty rare thing. To my far right, we have Ashley Page. Started in the music sector in the United Kingdom, ended up coming to New Zealand with the possibly daunting task of being in charge of a bunch of things. Thank you. Hi. Including one of our most holy of holies, the Flying Nun catalogue and the Flying Nun masthead. Also then did A&R at Warner for a while. Decided to branch out on their own. Started several things on their own, in fact, and one of the main ones we're going to be talking about today is Page One Management, their management imprint where they manage artists, producers and writers, some of the biggest and best in the game today. To my immediate right, someone who has worked with Ashley Page for over a decade, their stories intertwining through many of the aforementioned places. The leader of one of New Zealand's preeminent pop-punk bands at one point, then moved for a while into music creation for commercial imperatives, and then producer to some of the finest stars in the international pop firmament, including Lorde, Imagine Dragons, Taylor Swift, you name it. I'm going to rax a line from the bio you provided even because I like it so much. There are over 1 billion reasons to know Joel Little, because that's how many times songs he's been involved with have been streamed. Please join me and welcome these two to the stage today.
Thank you. Is this thing on? Is this thing on? I am. Great start. It's nice to be here. Thank you for the intro.
Did I get anything wrong? Any notes?
I think it's 5 billion, actually.
5 billion.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Other than that, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah. 5 billion. When did it hit over 5 billion?
I've just got 5 of those APRA Billion Stream Awards, so I know that 5 songs have all reached 1 billion.
Wow.
And I think, is this on? Yeah. I think we've got another 2 that are about to go as well, so we're close on 7 billion. So
close
plus.
on 7 billion streams. What makes up those streams? From which, because I mean, people think of DSPs, right? But it's also YouTube as well, isn't it? Just every way that an audience can interact with something that you've put your fingerprints on.
Exactly that. Just there are so many different ways, but yeah. And now obviously branching into TikTok, branching into a number of different countries that will include streams from different places.
So as I mentioned, you two have worked together for over a decade, which I don't want to sound grim, but that can be quite rare in the music sector. There are lots of reasons why people part ways, some of them amicable, some not so amicable. Do you remember, cast your mind back, set the scene for us, when you first started working together? What were you both doing at the time?
I was at Festival Mushroom Records, and we just signed Goodnight Nurse, and I think at that point in time they were just about to embark on the Schools tour.
That's the Boost Mobile tour?
That was the Boost Mobile tour with the Boost Mobile van, yeah.
I dare a telco to bring that back. Who is brave enough?
It was,
anyway, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah, that part of it was incredible. The actual Schools tour was incredible, but I was then sent out to sort of meet with Goodnight Nurse out at one of the... I think I went to 2 or 3, but yeah, that was probably the first time we met.
Yeah. I don't think we were actually signed at the time either. I think we were doing the tour, which was 120 shows in 5 months.
It's something ridiculous like that, yeah.
Yeah, which was such an incredible way to... Like, nobody really knew about our band before that, and by the time we'd finished it, kind of everybody did. And I still meet people to this day who say that I came to their school and, like, it was the best lunchtime ever. But I remember actually coming out, and we were just shitting ourselves because we were like, this A&R from this record label is coming, and we better not fuck it up. Like, we got to play our best, and... Yeah, it was terrifying at the time because it was all new to us, all of that, at that stage.
So you knew they were there?
Yeah.
And you chatted afterwards?
Yeah.
I honestly can't. I remember going to about 2 or 3 of those shows, but I don't remember that particular first one.
No, I can't remember where it was, but I remember the feeling of being nervous around you.
You still are.
Which is still...
And it's never abated.
Yeah.
It's that thing like when you know that Darth Vader's walked into the room behind you and everything just goes quiet. That's how Joel treats me when we walk into the room.
Got a real Darth Vader vibe about him. It was 2004 as well, so however many years ago that was, 18 years that we've been working together.
So it was originally A&R, you were looking for an artist to sign?
Yes.
And you found that in Goodnight Nurse.
Yes.
What made Goodnight Nurse stand out? There were a lot of bands on that Boost Mobile tour.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of bands, and we also did work with 48 May at the time. Were they on the same tour? I think they were on the same tour.
No.
They weren't?
No, they weren't.
Who was on that particular
It was
tour?
just us on the tour.
And I think that was it. It was actually just at that point in time to have a band that had gone around so many different schools, played to so many different people. You're talking about pre-Facebook, and it wasn't like you could sort of see how social media numbers were doing. You just sort of knew they were getting radio play or could have that possibility of radio play. And we're in front of every school in the country at that point. As you said, it was the biggest tour, so... Yeah. Everything sort of felt right. And I know the first record was pretty much already made if it wasn't already made. But yeah, it was, I think for us, that was just sort of sitting in the right place with the right amount of shows and the right people. So it felt good.
Did you see something about a band's work ethic when you see them on a tour that fast?
No, not these guys early on. I mean, the work ethic is that they were getting in a van, driving themselves to do it, and then playing every single lunchtime. So yeah, there was definitely a work ethic that's above and beyond a lot of bands, yeah. But... No, I think that early my brain wouldn't have been thinking like that.
So what was your brain thinking? Getting them on radio, possibly getting them to do a record.
Yep.
As those things did progress for your band, how did things change for you?
I mean, it was just a huge opportunity, I guess. We didn't really... I think we were just kind of following our noses, doing like the next thing. Like, okay, I think we did that tour, and then we were like, okay, well, what do you do next? You go make an album, and so we made the album, and then FM. I think it was like pretty much the day of or something.
Yeah.
FMR got bought out by Warner.
The
Correct.
day of.
Yeah, like the day that we were signing, and so we were like, what's going to happen?
And it was like. The sale was an absolute bloodbath. Like, you're setting the scene. Festival Mushroom Records and Flying Nun was a company of, I think, about 20 people maybe, and only 2 of us were kept on. So literally there were 18 people. Like, this was not a fun time for anybody, especially to bring a new band into the fold and be like, hey, and this is your new label.
Welcome to the industry.
No, this is your new label. Yeah, so it was kind of I was sort of, I guess, that point that kept everything tied together for these guys. And that became quite a passionate thing for me, even moving into album number 2. Because album number 2, the guys took a lot more involvement. It was recorded over in Australia, literally poured blood, sweat and tears into 2 years of making a record. And that was kind of the tipping point for me at a major label as well, just sort of feeling like I'd sort of seen a couple of the bands before, and this may not be actually true as to how the record company viewed it. For me, I was the artist liaison within the record company as A&R, so I felt super responsible to Joel, to the other members of the band, and had seen a couple of bands before just fall by the wayside because, you know, whoever was big at the time, Muse were the international priority, I think. So Warner responsibility as a major label here was not to foster and break local acts as much as it was to sell those big international acts that cost the label a fortune and make sure they did their numbers. So I'd sort of seen bands go by the wayside, but these guys had made such an amazing record, and I'd been a part of that process, and I'd gone to Melbourne and sort of been with these guys, and they've been through the ringer emotionally as a band to get the record done. So yeah, it became very personal at that point.
This is the last Goodnight Nurse record?
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of that relationship that's fostered over all of that time together, you know, going through the label change, the buyout, seeing how that affects an artist that you are getting closer and closer to and have empathy for, is that why you think you eventually started looking at management as opposed to A&R? Staying with an artist as opposed going album to album to album?
Yeah. I really wasn't enjoying being at the major record company. I kind of knew that was not going to be my future growing into that, and had sort of felt that within Goodnight Nurse there were, you know, 4 members at the end that were all doing incredible things individually and had so many different ideas, and I kind of wanted to foster all of those ideas and wasn't going to be able to. I kind of became quite apparent that I wasn't going to be able to. I'd asked to set up for these guys to have their own label deal within Warner, and was sort of just being placated every step of the way of like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it, that's great, let's do it. And then I think 3rd or 4th time of asking, I was like, this is not going to happen. And I remember just going home and being like, okay, I'm leaving Warner, I'm just going to set up a management company. So yeah, it was, you know, jumping out of the plane without a parachute time, but yeah, that's how it worked.
Do you think with regards to Warner that was a resources thing, or was it because it was predominantly being run out of Australia by that time and you were essentially a New Zealand band?
I mean, I don't really know about from the label side how that was playing out.
Like I say, I think it's a numbers thing as well. I think all best intention, Warner would love to break every artist, but the record would come out and it became part of the machine. The record would come out, it would be promoted, it would get the press, and then it would be gone and they'd be on to the next record. And I'm like, no, we've just spent 2 years doing this. Yeah. Like, this cannot disappear in 2 weeks. So I'm sure that's how they were working to get their numbers, but that's not how New Zealand artists can develop.
Joel, do you remember when Ashley said to you, I'm out, I'm going out on my own, you coming with?
Yeah, it was more of at that point, as he said, everyone in the band, I mean, we were always very ambitious, all of us, and very, passionate about making music in one form or another. And I think with around the time of that second Goodnight Nurse record, before, I think it was a week before we went to record that record, I found out I was having my first kid. And I didn't tell the band because I didn't want them to stop focusing on getting the best possible album. So I was shitting myself the whole time, freaking out about this, but while we were in Melbourne making this album, that's how passionate I was about getting it to be the best possible thing. So shit, I'm about to have a baby. This better be a fucking good album. But then we, Sam McCarthy, who was our guitarist, still is a super, super talented and very successful producer. And he was the one in the band that was doing all of the demos. And at the time, was doing just making kind of little bits and pieces of songs on the side, and he'd send them through, and he sent me through this one demo, and I was like, oh man, this is so good. I'm coming around tomorrow and we're finishing the song up, and it became My House by Kids of 88, which was
slightly large single.
Yeah, which was a big song at the time, and I think Ashley heard that and was like, shit, we got to do something with these songs. I think that's when you started seeing the potential outside of just Goodnight Nurse, and let's start a label, called it Dry Industry, and let's just start putting some of this stuff out, because there's so much potential here from things outside of Goodnight Nurse as well. So that was when things started to open up, and we started to look at, I felt like as soon as I started being involved more behind the scenes, that's when the songs actually started doing really well, when I was writing and producing and not singing like Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
There's nothing wrong with Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
I'm still a huge, huge Blink fan.
Ditto. You say you jumped without a parachute. How were those early days? 2008 was quite a seismic year for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It was actually. That's going to, From a personal point of view, which is, I guess, what you're talking about, it was difficult. I literally quit Warner Music September, and then in October, so about coming up the anniversary, I got a call from my mother saying, in England, who lived in England, saying she only had 10 weeks left to live. So I went back to the UK for 10 weeks and would spend the day with her in palliative care, would spend the night setting up a company, working all the way through. And Warner were amazing. At that point, I was looking after Shehad as well. And they'd given me one of the Shehad records to look after still. So I was literally doing, would finish at palliative care, go home, have dinner, and get online for about 9 o'clock, work through till about 3 in the morning, get a couple of hours sleep, and then go. So, it was, those were tough. And I guess that first year coming back, the beauty is that's always set up the ethos of our company. The beauty with the companies has always, with Dryden Street, and the way we've always looked at things, and Page One has always been very family orientated. Family will always come first, and that's with Joel and his family, and with anyone I look after. So that kind of set up the ethos. But it was difficult times. But the good part about that is the success that came from that. And first year being outside of Warner, to have My House be as successful as My House was, and then come back into New Zealand, back into that, and then I think, we won Single of the Year at the New Zealand Music Awards that year. And I remember we decided to really show off and get a table. We were like, oh my God, we're going to get a table at the New Zealand Music Awards. We are fancy. We've hit it, And
they were like, wait, how much does this cost?
Yeah. How much? All of our money. Let's go for it.
We spent all of our profits on the table.
Yeah. But we were like the next table to Warner. I just remember looking across as we won Single of the Year, being like, this is incredible. Like, this is the start of something fun. So, yeah.
right next to Warner at the same award.
Yeah.
Best single.
We could have probably been at the other end, but in my head we were right next to them. Yeah, forevermore. That's how I remember it.
You mentioned family and how both Dryden Street and Page One can be a bit of a family, and obviously you're creating these very trusting, empathetic relationships with everyone you work with, yourself as well as a producer. How do you keep yourself safe boundary-wise? How do you maintain that work-life balance? Because you've mentioned that it's important to you, but when you're using those same muscles in your work life, where do you draw the line? What keeps you safe mentally?
I mean, it's a constant, you're just working at it constantly, really, to get the balance right between feeling like you're putting in the work that you need to get the results that you need to, and also being a good husband and father and not being an absentee dad traveling around working with people overseas. Like, I just have to, it's just a constant conversation that my wife and I have, and a feeling that I have. Like, I don't know, I feel like especially when Lila, our first child, was born, I was working my ass off, because at that point I had nothing. We were broke, and we're just, I was like, how am I going to make a living off of music and support a family? And so it was just long hours. And, you know, ended up getting really good at being a producer, but also, like, at the time it wasn't super healthy. So we had to kind of figure that out over time. It's something that we learned.
So that was the period at which you then became incredibly au fait with headphones and tech, as opposed to being Tom DeLonge, as you said before.
Yeah.
What first interested you, or what opened the door for you to start looking at production?
I mean,
other than the need to pay the rent.
Yeah, well, a little bit of that. But I'd always, the creative side was always the part that I loved about being in a band. I was always I didn't want to be the lead singer in a band necessarily. It was fun, but I did it because we couldn't find anybody else to do it at the time. And I was like, well, I'll just do it for now, and then maybe we'll find someone better. And just kind of got stuck with the role. But I always loved being in the studio. That was my favorite part, writing the songs. And once the Kids of 88 thing started to take off, I didn't have Sam to hassle anymore every time I had a demo that I wanted to record. So I was like, I need to figure something out here. Maybe I should just buy some cheap gear and start teaching myself how to record, and, like, set it up in my garage, and just started working away at it, and made terrible music for like a good while, and then started to kind of just figure it out, basically.
Terrible music, but great adverts.
Yeah. I actually found some old USB yesterday, funnily enough, and I did the music for this thing called The Mix, which was like a little, like, infomercial thing, which I made at...
Like a blender?
It was like a little ad that would come on where they would, like, make a cocktail or something, and it would be to sell some, like lime juice or something like that, which is whatever they were wanting to, and it would be someone, like, literally, like, mixing cocktails or mixing a drink, and I made the music for that. It was just weirdly showed up yesterday. It was from 2010, this USB that I found. But I was just really committed to it, and with the ad stuff, like, I mean, outside of that, I was playing covers on the weekends and doing everything that I could to just pay the bills. And I think Ashley was the first one. Ashley was the one that got us into gave us the opportunity to do the ad work. So he came to me and Sam one day and said, Steinlager are looking for a song for this new mid-strength beer called Steinlager Edge. Do you want to pitch something? And we just got together that day, made a song, I sang on it, and they were like, yeah, this is great. And I think I got paid like $6,000. And I was like, holy shit.
Sick.
This is the most money I've ever had. I was like, if I can get one of these every, like, couple of months, then I don't have to do the covers anymore.
Yeah.
And I can just focus on this stuff. This is great. It was fun. And it was fun just making, like, every week there'd be some new, like, can you do a country song? And can you do a dubstep song? I did this big campaign for V, which was like this dubstep thing, and I'd never made a dubstep song before, but when they ask, I'm like, yeah, totally, I can. Yeah. Of course I can do that. So, and then I'd be like, shit, how do you make go on YouTube and be like, how to make a dubstep song? But it was kind of out of necessity a little bit, but also just really discovered a passion for that at the same time.
And that dubstep song ended up winning us a gold lion at the Cannes Advertising Awards. So, I mean, it worked. I mean, it worked in so many ways that we actually won our biggest international award off of that. So, and Joel, anyone here who works in advertising, and I know there are a few people here who work in sync in the advertising side, knows how particular a client can be. One thing they tell you they want musically is actually not what they want, and you have to be able to, from a musician's point of view, it's very difficult. You think you can do it because you know everything about music, but actually the liaison with the client is the hard part, because to change after change, and you just have to suck it up. That's what you're being music they want. Joel's tolerance at that point was what made him good in that world, because he didn't, he could separate the song with what he wanted to do as well, how he felt it should have been.
Did you approach it almost as a musical challenge each time? Here's your brief, those are your parameters, go. And you're learning the whole time. Yeah,
completely. And it was kind of, I enjoyed it because it wasn't music that I was making for myself. I was making it for somebody. I was good at reading between the lines of when they said, this is what we want it to sound like. I could kind of tell what they really were saying when they said that. And so I'd give them something. And usually it was what they were actually after. But yeah, I didn't feel like it took I felt like when I was doing the covers, weirdly, that sapped my creativity a lot. And then when I was doing the ads, it was like using a different part of my creative brain somehow. So I could do that and then still have the energy to write my own songs. And when we set up Golden Age Studio, that was kind of the plan, was to do the ads to pay the bills and then do the work with artists to, because that was my passion, was actually writing and working with musicians.
So when Dryden Street first started, did you imagine that it would be taking in so much corporate and commercial work, or were you...
No, we separated it. That was through level 2. Right. Dryden Street was separate, so we kept it very separate.
Did you imagine when you left Warner that you would end up in that space? Or were you initially artist-focused?
I was happy to pay the bills.
Harder, yeah.
And, even from my point of view, it was like, how does music work? And it's always been the fascination for me is you then have to be like, I love this band, but if it's not actually paying the bills, at some point there has to be that separation between, actually the financial side of things and the reward that you put into it. So that was something where it just made sense. I was getting paid, and then I could also put the investment into the label side as well.
Did you have people approaching you at this time to manage them? Have you had that for most of your career, as being known as an A&R person?
Yeah, probably. I guess so, yeah, most likely.
What's a yes for you and what's a no? What kind of relationship do you have to establish trust-wise, musicality-wise, in order for you to go, yeah, all right, jump on board?
I have to race through this because it's 27 minutes and I want Joel to get through his stories. I don't know. Honestly, for me, it's... There's a number of things, and the work ethic, the one biggest thing has always been that you have to believe in everything 100%, because you have to go home. If you're going to earn, say, a management commission of 20% is standard in the industry. If you're going to earn 20%, and they're earning at the 100%, you're just getting 20%, then you either need another 4 of those artists to make up that 100%, or you have to believe that you're going to make enough of a living you have to believe in them thoroughly, basically, to be able to put your heart and soul into it, to build it to that next level. They have to run as fast as you run. Exactly. You cannot be the one doing it and then find out they're like, I don't know, man, I don't really like doing interviews. You're just kind of like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. Or nowadays, I guess TikTok, it's just like, that's just part of the parcel. It is what it is.
And vice versa, you have to run as fast as the people you represent run.
Yeah.
When people approach you and they're interested in working with Joel, for example, and misconceptions about what they will be buying into. For example, I tried my best, where's my Grammy? Or work with Joel.
What are the biggest... It's difficult because you sort of, especially with the producer world, there's I guess we work in the American market now as much as we work in the New Zealand market or anywhere else. So you kind of are used to certain standards that when you come back through New Zealand or Australia or any other market, it's kind of, we're still developing, we're still understanding a lot of things about how deals are structured. So I guess for me, the misconception can often, there's a financial aspect to paying a fee. So it's like there is a certain fee base to this, no this. Joel turns around and says, this is what I'm going to do. And actually, the funniest part about it is, I guess, the one thing that I've always said and will always say is I will put everything in front of Joel. I cannot assume I know what Joel's going to like. This is not like a filter system where it's like half of it doesn't get through to Joel. It's like, this is his decision. Joel has turned down as many big name artists as he has accepted artists that are completely unknown. The Khalid record. Khalid was at a time when location wasn't released and no one would work with Khalid. And his management team and his label are quite happy to acknowledge that even to this day. That was something where Joel went, I love this guy's voice. There's something about this song, there's something about these demos. I kind of want to try it. So I guess that's the biggest misconception, is there's a sort of level to it. There are aspects to it. Like I said, there's a deal structure that has to come together. But at the same time, it's kind of like everything goes, it's not my decision, it's his decision.
Similar question to you then. What makes you say yes? What makes you say no? What keeps you engaged and invigorated and wanting to work with people?
I mean, it's excited about it when I hear it. Like Ashley said, I've turned down a lot of things that I'm sure Ashley's I know that, like, sure, that could be a great opportunity. The times where I have said yes to something where I'm kind of like, I don't really feel like in my gut like it's great, but it's kind of too much of an opportunity to turn down. It's always turned into something that's not been a super enjoyable process, usually quite tough. Like, just because I feel like I just generally I get a feeling for it right from the get-go as soon as I hear, like with Khalid, when I heard his voice, I was like, I definitely feel like I could do something cool with this. And we wrote Young, Dumb and Broke the first day that we worked together. But then there's other times where I'm like, I just don't quite have that feeling, but I'm going to do it. And it always kind of turns into a process, and I don't feel like I do as good a job of it. And a gut reaction.
You've both spoken about gut instinct and both spoken about gut reactions to wanting to jump on board with things in the past in various interviews. And in today's music sector, so many decisions are data-driven. So few decisions are instinct-driven. Yeah. Do you feel you're both in a lucky position that you get to make decisions based upon instinct when so many others don't?
I certainly do, because I think when they come through raw, even if you've had a TikTok song or something, a TikTok moment, which you hear all the time, they're having a TikTok moment. It's like, even if you're there to where an artist should be when a record label signs them to push them, there's like a good 2-year gap. It's like, literally, the Rock Quest is the greatest example. The Rock Quest is still the greatest example. It's the best competition. We are so lucky to have the Rock Quest in this country. But there's always been that 2 years where a band comes through, knows who they want to be at school. Phoenix Foundation, great example. They were a metal band in Rock Quest. 2 years later, they are not a metal band, but they are one of the greatest bands, and I love them to this day. So it's that development part. You've got to allow people to actually go through that process and have an A&R or somebody that trusts and can help you find that next step. Yeah, so it is gut. That's gut. It can't be data-driven.
Yeah. And
everyone's is going to be different. And it won't always be right when I do it, and it won't always be right when Joel decides, but that's what you have to live by, so you have to be sure that that's right. I was going to say, every producer and how they make their decision is very different, even within the stable of producers I work with. So something that Joel might not like for some reason might be exactly why another producer loves that. So, that's, I guess, just knowing that person.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. And that's why I feel like I should say no to those things that I don't have that instinct for, because someone else will have that instinct for it and will do a great job of it. And I'd rather, even though they might think on paper that I would do a great job, I just don't think that I'll be right for it, and someone else will be right for it. So I'd rather leave that space open for them to have that experience with somebody else.
Now I'm going to whiz past what is possibly the most written about section of your career, because there's something I really want to touch on before we run. From, leading a pop punk band, playing cover type of work, to being one of the most in-demand pop producers of the day. There's a beautiful photo of you and Ali Yelich O'Connor at the Grammy Awards accepting your award, and over your left shoulder, just out of focus, is Carole King.
Oh, it was insane. It's such a, yeah, I mean, like a dream. It was, obviously we were very nervous beforehand. My whole family was there. Everyone came over. Ashley was running around like a madman trying to make sure they were all comfortable. Yeah, Gemma and I, my wife Gemma and I think we were actually literally the first people in the whole of the arena like to walk in, and because we didn't really know what to do with ourselves, didn't know where we were supposed to go or what we were supposed to do beforehand. It's the weirdest thing because everyone's in tuxedos and suits and ball gowns and whatever, but there's no food or drink, and there's like a big queue at the McDonald's. Everyone's in their tuxedos getting McDonald's out in the foyer, and it's kind of bizarre. But yeah, we like went into the arena and went up to an usher, and I was pretty sure they were sitting quite close to the front because we were nominated for some of the big awards. But I went up to an usher and he was like, I think you're over here, and I was kind of halfway back, and so me and Gemma just kind of sat there like halfway back in the thing, but literally no one else around. I was like, I feel like we're a little close to the front, but so eventually I was like, I'm just going to go and check with someone else, and then they're like, oh yeah, you're right up there, like second row from the front. So anyway, it's just like a whole this whole thing, the whole place started to pack out. It was just an incredible night. I was terrified because I knew that our awards were towards the end, so I couldn't really relax. And Ella had said, if we win, like, you have to go first. So I was like, shit. But yeah, and then the award came up, and everything just kind of, went and they read out our name, went up, did the speech. It's like every now and then I've gone on to watch it from it's on YouTube. And I'm still, when they're about to announce it, like, come on. It's surreal, but and then like walk back off the stage. I think as we we kind of had to pop back, but then we had like backstage to get a photo, and then Carol King was holding the envelope that she'd, the winning envelope, and I was like, oh, excuse me, Miss King, do you mind if I have that? And she was like, oh, of course, and like gave me a hug. It was really she was so lovely. But and then we walked back out, and Beyonce grabbed Ella and was like, congratulations, and then Jay-Z like shook my hand, and it was the whole thing was surreal. And then I sat down, and then I heard this, hey, congratulations, man, from behind me, and I turned around, it was Quentin Tarantino. So the whole thing was just super bizarre. But
you said the word surreal, that about sums it up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It was awesome.
What was that night like for you?
A little more stressful for you, I think.
Yeah, mine was a little bit more stressful because Joel had, I think, 10 to 15 guests. So it was, I had no idea. I was winging it as well. It's the first time, and you're up for the big awards. And then it's like, making sure everyone arrives. Are they with the security details? Have we got through security? Are they everyone's sitting in different places? Is everyone in their seats okay? Mum and dad are over. They have to be guided around the place. And it's like, then you have to make sure you've got the right after-party tickets. Republic have it. What? And then finding out, it's like, someone such's got an after-party. It's going to be here. And then be like, we've got to get 15 people in. It's just like this mad sort of panic of, then checking out with Joel's mum sort of stood in the middle of a hip-hop club, at 2 a.m. going, could I go home now, please? And then so organising the cars home. So for me, it was much more, legit. While it was incredible and Joel won, I didn't get to relax or drink that night. I remember nothing other than a mad organisational panic.
I feel bad for you. I don't think you got to really enjoy it that much. There was too much family.
Yeah, I don't know at what point I will, but I still probably haven't.
Yeah.
In your careers together, what is something you have had the time to enjoy with regards to Joel's career?
Ooh. I mean, God, there have been so many successes along the way, and it's just been really nice. I always say that one of the biggest wins was when Joel was able to purchase his first house. To me, that was a bigger win than anything we've done going forward from that, because the financial security when you start out, and our first conversations were, I'm playing a covers at Black Salt to try and make money, and my wife has just found out she's having a child. I'm just like, okay, so to go from there to a financial security is way bigger than everything else we've done. Like, that to me was everything. So, but there's obviously been so many things along the way, and it's happened so fast. The fact that it's 17 or 18 years is kind of weird. Yeah.
It's a very familial thing to be proud of, the purchase of a first home. It's a testament to the strength of your bond and how you work together.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing is I don't need to, I don't stress about Joel. Like, we work incredibly hard together, but I just, we have this sort of level of communication now that just feels quite relaxed and is quite good. So, yeah, I'm very lucky we've got to that point, together that we've, I guess, don't have to overthink it. I know how he's going to react if something happens, so it's quite nice. That part's good. Yeah.
Now you are in a place that you've both admitted you get to be in charge of the course of what you do a lot more. What has made you decide in particular that course leads to Big Fan?
I feel like it's just been I've always kind of followed my nose a little bit and done whatever at the time felt like the right next thing to do. I feel like after a good 10 years of being in the studio and achieving as much as I have, and after Lord, moving to LA and then being like, can I do it again? And then doing it again a few times with various artists, I'd kind of ticked all those boxes, and I feel like I was looking for a new challenge. I was looking for something different, wanted to do something that would benefit people, the next generation coming through. I enjoy now that I'm in a position where I don't have to play covers at Black Salt on a Sunday afternoon. I was
trying to figure out what bar it was. Thank you for mentioning that.
Sorry, yeah.
There was a lot. That was one of the many. But I want to do, it's fun to be in a position where you can give back. And so we were talking about what to do, and also there's a little bit of the balance now of not being in the studio all day every day, which I do love that part of it, but it's cool to have something else that kind of gives me a reason to have a bit of a break from that rather than just slogging away at songs, because then I could get really excited about going back in and working on songs. So so Big Fan is a labor of love, and it's something that is, for those of you that don't know, it's a building that my wife and I have bought in Morningside, and for the last 2.5 years have been working towards getting it open. It's going to be it's a not-for-profit with 3 recording studio, writing, production rooms upstairs, and a 200 capacity all ages venue downstairs. And the idea is that we want it to be accessible to everybody. So every studio has the same gear, the same mics, the same preamps, the same speakers, everything that I use every day. Wow. The venue has a top-of-the-line PA system and backline and everything that any young artist would need to put on a high-quality show. And we want it to be a space that that everybody's welcome, but we're putting particular emphasis on people that wouldn't necessarily have access or the finances to be able to have that experience, to be able to get in there and do it and enjoy it and hopefully discover a passion or just have a good time making music, being creative, meeting other people. Really excited about it.
Sounds pretty exciting. So how does that, you say there are 3 studios at the top. Are you going to have some flashy clients in one of those studios that can help pay for the rest of the carry-on?
Like I say, everyone's welcome. But I have my studio there too, so I want to do writing camps, get people in from overseas. We're kind of working towards that next year, just getting a bunch of people that I am a fan of or that I work with regularly to come down. We just want to do everything. We just want to be able to come up with cool. It's cool to have it's like a playground. We just got to come up with cool ideas and be like, okay, well let's do that because we have this place and we can do it. So, doing writing camps where we have local artists working with people that come in from overseas. We do all local camps. We just want to kind of experiment with it and see. And also, we want it to be what people want it to be. I guess we want whatever the need is out there, whatever it's best used for. That's what we want it to be. So we're not don't have any. We've got all these plans and ideas and things we want to do there, but we really just want to see. We want to open it up first of all, but we want to see what it becomes from people using it.
Ashley, what was your response when Joel told you this is what he wanted to do? Move back from LA, start building a complex.
I mean, it's pretty incredible, you know, when you're in a position to be able to do that,
Yeah.
and that's what we'd worked ourselves in, was that position to be able to give back, and if that's what Joel wants to spend his money on, that's insane. It's a beautiful, it's incredible what they've done.
In a good way, right?
In a very good
Yeah.
way, yeah. Yeah, in the best kind of way, to invest back into the community. It sort of feels really nice full circle. And you know, Joel is still working. So Joel won't be there the whole time. He's still out in LA quite a bit, and probably 50-50. And that's, as you were talking about earlier, with a young family as well, and a business back here. It's kind of, that's the balance we're working on at the moment. But so far so good, and everything changes, and we try and work that out. He's just finished another big record, so it's like, that's great to be able to still be doing that whilst everything else is going on. Post, you know, through COVID, like we spent time together in MIQ in Christchurch, so we still went whilst, you know, and kept working whilst everyone, you know, whilst the travel was tough to do. We managed to make it work. So, yeah.
It's such an amazing gift to give to emerging artists and to the music communities and culture in this country. Speaking of emerging artists, though, from an A&R point of view, and feel free to jump in on this as well because you work with a lot of them internationally, how do you feel things have changed over the years from when you were first signing bands to Flying Nun, signed the Mint Chicks, thank you very much for doing that, to now, again, when we're seeing things being so data-driven and some of that instinct and resource being taken away?
We are so lucky. We are so lucky in New Zealand that we have such a talented community, and it's largely, I feel like what record companies look for is different to what, you know, I don't feel like if somebody else sets up a competition, that it would be a competition, because what I look for is different to what somebody else looks for. And there is a wealth of talent there. We are literally, even on the producer side, when you take it, not just Joel and Sam de Jong, who's now LA-based, but Taste, Leroy Clampett, Simon Oscroft, like, we can literally run through a number of producers from New Zealand who are now doing incredible things in Los Angeles. So the production side has lifted itself, and thanks to Greg Haver as well for the production courses that happen around here, because the levels are raised. The talent is here. That hasn't changed. It's just having someone that has the time to go and work out what they like and help develop it and bring it through.
Do you think that's where a good manager comes in, potentially? I mean, a lot of artists are self-managed. They have a distrust of some of the larger mechanics of the sector. What advice would you give to someone if they're looking for a manager to trust with their career?
Take your time.
Yeah.
The times that we've rushed into being excited about someone and signing a management deal within 3 months have generally been the times that it's gone pear-shaped. See if you can walk alongside them I don't even think a trial period, because that doesn't help anybody, but just to actually learn to like that person, walk alongside them for a bit and actually help show how you can help. I just don't think rushing into management is the right thing to do, and the distrust is one part of it, but if they're a friend of yours, they then have to also be able to separate that friendship.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a number of different things. You're kind of, every time you do something like this, it's, for me, even when we were dealing with Broods years ago, it was actually having to have the trust of parents as well. So there are so many different aspects to it. Yeah.
That's a great segue to asking you a very similar question. When you receive a call from your manager saying, hey, I've got this 14-year-old I want you to spend some time with, how do you gain the trust of someone that involves gaining the trust of their parents, their support structure, and then spending lots of time with them working on songs that might be about incredibly personal things in their lives, giving feedback on those songs and sometimes ripping them up and starting again? How do you build that trust?
I guess just by not being a dick.
Solid.
First of all, I don't know, it's just a time thing. I think you just have to get to know somebody and be aware of what, of who they are and what they need to hear at any particular time. I feel like every artist is different, and I feel like I kind of have to figure that out as I go with each person. Every time I'm working with somebody new, is okay. How to communicate things in a way that is going to make them be the best version of themselves. And with the bigger artists, there's usually, they have the experience where they're not, you can be a little bit more straightforward with them about things. And newer artists, it's always a challenge. But I think, I think it's just there was definitely with Ashley, especially even with Ella. First of all, when she was, he was saying there's this young kid and she's 14. I was in my late 20s, and I was like, and at the time as well, I hadn't really written any songs with anyone apart from my friends at that point. I hadn't done any proper collaborating, any writing sessions. That wasn't even really a thing back in 2012.
You had worked with the Peasants, and that was kind of with who became Broods, and that was actually what I was able to hang the fact that Joel could work with a younger artist and understood how to help develop it. Yeah,
but I'd produced, Jaden and I produced them as part of, I think they won the part of winning the Rock Quest. They were lucky enough to get to work with us. We were like figuring out how to produce even at the time. It's just a skill that I've developed through experience, but it's just one of those things. You just have to be aware of people and create a safe space where they feel comfortable, and that's the most important thing. I feel like that's really benefited me even in LA as well. I think the Kiwi way is something that people often appreciate, because you're just treating everybody like they're a normal person. And artists who come in thinking that they have to behave like a big famous person quickly realize that they can just relax and they don't have to do that when they're in my studio. So I think that that helps. It's just finding ways to put people at ease.
Nice. Speaking of the Kiwi way, though, a particularly Kiwi way is not being able to talk about success particularly well, and particularly the trappings that come with success and the scale up that comes with success. How different do you find it talking about what it is that you do and the scale upon which you do it overseas versus at home?
I don't know. I don't really. I guess I do. I'm not sure. How would you answer this question? I need to think about it.
Is that in relation to anything?
Anything at all. We're not good at. If you get successful overseas, we'd love to claim you back. That's a classic Kiwi thing.
Yeah.
But we're not good at celebrating success, particularly for extended periods of time. We usually pick at the corners of the wallpaper and start to tear it down after a while.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, people are like, oh, you do that? You earn how much? That's so cool.
Yeah. I definitely feel like we could do with being a little more, with celebrating our successes. Well, a lot more, actually. I feel like sometimes if Josh 685 comes to mind as an example, literally number one on the Hot 100. I feel like he didn't get anywhere near as much credit as he deserved for that. Like how many of those have we had now?
There's only been three number one
in the history
artists
of New Zealand.
From New
music.
Zealand,
yeah. Like that's such a huge achievement. I feel like we could do with celebrating that type of thing a lot more here. There's a balance, but I think it's important to celebrate these things and to feel like, I think when people hear about it, it makes it feel more achievable as well, So you want people to feel like, okay, I'm from New Zealand and we can do this down here now.
We are probably just as bad as anybody else. Like I know when I go into a meeting in America, in Los Angeles, to pitch for work, that you have to have a certain mindset that's quite forward and be like, this is what we do, this is how it's done. And even going into a meeting in the UK, they're like, well, that's a bit like, dial that back a little bit. Like, let alone when you come back here and it's like, oh, did you do this? And you're like, yep.
Sorry.
How's it all been? Yeah, no, it's good, man, it was good. I just got back Friday, I feel fine, yeah, no, it's good. And you just don't talk about it at all when you come back. So, yeah. Like we literally, I think that's been the beautiful part of this journey, and it kind of probably wraps it out. Like even with, we did a big catalogue sale for some of Joel's catalogue during lockdown. We had Josh 685 number one in 15 countries, and a very substantial deal that we did for Joel. And that's been a really nice, from Joel's point of view, rounding out. And I think the beautiful part for us is that the hunger. We both had to sit down after that and go like, are we doing this? Are we going again? And it's like, are we ready? And it's like the hunger's still there to succeed and to do more. recalibrate, reset your goals, and know that that's where you want to go to. But the fact that we were able to achieve that from a conversation about, how we sort things out, Joel can't make money from that covers band. It's a cover set. It's not going to be enough to cover the bills, to where we are today. And it took a bit of time. If we can do that, anyone can do that. It's there's not this sort of unique story. Yeah, there's been planning. I sit down, we put 3-year plans together for Joel of how that next 3 years, how do we double down after Lord? How do we double down after Taylor Swift? Which direction are we going to go in? So there's planning. There's planning for every single person in this room, I'm sure. If you don't, that's what you need to do. But at the same time, if we can do it, every single person can do this. This is, it hasn't been rocket science. It's been hard work and probably a fair amount of luck, and then, the rest of it, I guess, is talent.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like as well that I feel like for me, not talking about the stuff and just kind of keeping my head down and in my mind, it's always been like, I'm not done yet. Like I've never really done interviews, or I don't often do things like this unless I have something like Big Fan to talk about, just because I feel like I'm not done yet. I'm still going to have success with the music, and I prefer to just focus on that and just keep working at it and not getting caught up in me being a famous producer. I don't need the attention to get work with these. Within the industry, everybody knows who I am. Mm-hmm. All the within the industry in the States and overseas, all the artists know who I am and will reach out, and then I have Ashley going around and telling me to people as well. So it's I prefer personally to just keep working and keep making good music and let that do the talking.
When does Big Fan open?
It's an excellent question. It's been such a mission with Auckland Council, but we are very close. I think if we said November, that would be safe, but we'll be announced as soon as we just have to jump over a couple more hurdles, and then we'll be announcing soon.
Beautiful. Thank you for wrapping it up so beautifully for me. I don't think I could have done it better myself. Thank you for both being excellent subjects, I guess is the term today. I'm aware having you both together talking about your careers at the same time is a bit of a rare treat.
We can go hide back under a rock now.
Right?
Hide in the darkness, yeah.
Please join me in thanking Ashley Page and Joel Little.
could possibly go wrong here?
Yeah, I'm going to use this one or that one. No one's sitting here. I'm going to make. I'm just trying to
There you go. Yeah.
Check. Check.
Oh, it's good to have the timer. I didn't have the timer.
Check.
Last one.
Check.
So I'm in Auckland, I moved in January. I'm still a director for the publishing company, but I've started one here as well, some local artists. No, my wife is from here. I had been here many times. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Shall I just start? Kia ora, everyone. Did that work? Oh, yeah, it's working. Kia ora, everyone. Ko Emily toko ingoa. Welcome to the panel on the mighty Britain. Massive fan. I lived there for 12 years, and I keep getting told I have rose-tinted glasses. I don't think I do. I think it's a fabulous place. I thought we would start with actually, without trying to sound like a Geography 101 teacher, that Britain encompasses Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. And Britain is obviously separate again. And the population together is I think it's about 69 million. So for a small island and a bit of land to the left, they really punch above their weight when it comes to the music industry and the influence it's had on us all. The home of the Kinks and the Who. So it's a great place to go and visit, to tour, to work and to live. So hopefully we're going to give you some inspiration and some direction on that. And the audience, who has toured the UK? Anyone? Yep. And anyone planning to go and tour soon? Kara's going. Cool. So it'd be good just to think of questions you have during the time. So if we're going to start, let's start with, we have an artist, they have a few streams, they're looking like they're getting some action, some people are listening over in the UK. What should they do next? Do they go and tour? What do they need to do in advance to really make the most of being, making the most of a trip?
Shall I start?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm probably coming at things from a PR perspective.
So we have PR, publishing, touring, Great Escape, Booker.
So when I speak, I'll probably be coming from that perspective, PR, media. In our world, we really the thing that we recommend most is to plan ahead, but also to have some momentum before you hit market. Even more so post-COVID, I can't emphasize enough the need to have a really clear plan, have everything ready, but to also have released some music and to be really aware and kind of working the market specifically. And I would kind of suggest trying to push into all of those things before you even hire a publicist in market. It just takes a lot to get seen and heard, and you want that momentum before you spend your hard-earned money probably touring the UK. Yeah,
Chloe and I had a chat about it, and we see applications and we see things that are got this publicist, and the attitude is, what does that really mean? You can give money to someone, they take it from you, and what do they do? So when it comes to actually getting a publicist, this was one of your pet hates as well, sort of take the money and then do things. There's a timing aspect involved, and I'm guessing that the publicist would have to really love you.
Yeah, I think I was saying this to Emily yesterday, my absolute bugbear is PR agencies that will take an artist's money when they know that they probably can't deliver a huge amount for them at that point in time. Our agency will be really honest about that sort of thing. I think a lot, even more so now, a lot of the hard work in the super early stages needs to come from the artist and probably from the artist core team. So like yourself and your manager, if you have one, working the socials, creating music, having a plan, and then doing that research before you jump into hiring a publicist, making sure that the artists that they look after represent the sort of artists that you are, making sure that you talk to them about what a plan looks like, making sure that you speak to them on the phone or a Zoom, just like doing all of that work before handing over money.
I think that, we can have a quick chat about which media, which blogs you can approach yourselves and get that help to get that momentum going. But we'll talk about that shortly. Teo, what do you think? Is there anything that you would recommend that people? I mean, obviously having a strategic plan before going over. Is there anything else you think they could?
Well, absolutely visiting first. I mean, if you haven't been, I think you will get
going to the Great Escape.
Absolutely, just understanding. I mean, someone said that yesterday about South by Southwest. If on the panel yesterday, rather than discovering it the first time where you're actually performing, just having that sort of initial, spending some time there, maybe making some initial contacts, so that when the opportunity to tour, arrives, you kind of know what where you're going, what that represents, and you'll go into it with, you'll get a lot more successes that way.
So looking at touring, so you have a bit of a plan and you want to book a tour. You've got some people. I think this is one of the toughest things for a lot of new artists is you don't have a booking agent. You haven't quite got to the level they can get a booking agent. Can you still go to the UK and have a successful tour, of smaller venues and book it yourself?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. But just do your research, I guess, because you could obviously go and play a show in London, but it needs to be in like the right venue, I guess. It needs to be in a touring venue or a venue that's in the right location, or that's kind of so a known spot where people go to hang out, because obviously you want to invite people down that are going to come and see you and that are going to be booking agents or managers or publicists and stuff. But yeah, just to echo what the other two people said, just make sure that you have a plan and momentum. There's no point just coming over just to play a show. But yeah, you can reach out to most venues directly. Most of the smaller venues will have an in-house booker and an in-house team that will be able to offer you support slots or opening slots or headline slots if you're worth tickets and you have a solid plan. But yeah, I think a lot of booking agents would prefer to work with people that are actually doing stuff. Just because you've got a booking agent doesn't mean that then everything's going to start to happen. You have to really hustle and work for it yourself to begin with.
I mean, my husband and I had a great time last night writing down club nights that we used to go to, and they used to be a big thing for a lot of the new artists to play, and you could go and play a lot of them regularly. Killer Hippies, Frog, Art Rocker. I know you said the other day, oh, Emily, that's a bit 2000, and exactly, I know that. But do those kind of events still exist and take on new bands? Not particularly those ones, but those kind of nights. Yeah,
that was a really beautiful time for like indie music. There was a lot of indie club nights and a lot of opportunities for live bands to play on late night clubs where they didn't necessarily have to bring an audience. There was already a crowd there. They're kind of few and far between now, really.
Roast into glasses.
Yeah, but on the upside, there's a lot more venues and there's a lot more opportunity to play smaller clubs. And there's where there was maybe like a handful of tastemaker club nights, there's now loads and loads of really good independent promoters and in-house bookers and stuff. So there are definitely people and things to latch onto and slipstreams that you can get into. Yeah.
I think maybe it's worth emphasising that the kind of music that you do makes quite a big difference to at what point does it make sense. So, if you're more on the electronic side, you could probably make sense of a UK European tour a bit earlier, probably because you don't have as many costs. If you're in London, and we can maybe come back to that afterwards, but that can be your hub for Europe. You might do a guest mix on a radio session. If you're a jazz musician, there's a really vibrant jazz scene in London in the last few years. Lots of nights. You could probably, at relatively short notice, take part in some of those things if you have the right peers that know what you do. So I guess it's just modulating to not always think, well, obviously we sort of think bands and, several people, but depending on your circumstances, you might have ways that you can make sense of the UK at earlier stages of your career.
And, unlike, you can play more than one show in some of these cities.
I would actually say, I think Adam just touched on this before, it's probably important to plan to play more than one show. Like, your first show is probably going to be exactly what Adam said. It's going to be some people in the industry coming to see if they like you, hopefully. It definitely won't be media because they're going to take a lot of warming up. So it's like in addition to putting the plan in place before you come into market to build momentum, I think it's about having a really cohesive in-market plan and planning to be there for enough time to play multiple shows, to not only plan to play, say, London. There are other big cities that do really well for live music. That also helps you engage with media in each of those markets. So I think it's about putting a wider plan in place.
I mean, I've seen bands before who play London, they go and do some other shows and they come back to London at the end. So if we're looking at other cities, all big music, there's a lot of big music hubs. And are there any other cities that should be focus targets? Do they go, we should definitely always try and do Manchester? Or is it depending on the music? Always try and do Cardiff?
If you come over to the Great Escape in the May window, there's a lot of events that you can latch onto that would be a soft-ticketed show. So there's Focus Wales, which is in Wrexham, Liverpool Sound City, which is in Liverpool, surprisingly. Live at Leeds. And then there's a couple in. I think we do 2 satellite events, one in Dublin and one in Glasgow, as part of the Road to the Great Escape. So there's a lot of. If you were to get booked for the Great Escape, then I would suggest getting in touch with those other tastemaker events, and then that way you won't have to shift any tickets. But yeah, there's a few key cities, but it all comes down to doing research. Like, if your music is more suited, each city kind of has its own sort of vibe, I guess. Bristol's totally different to London and Manchester and Glasgow. They all have their predominant scenes, and you should do some research to see what nights and what venues would suit your genre of music.
Probably also worth adding, just on a media tip, that at all of those places, at all of those festivals that Adam just mentioned, that is where you have media who want to see new artists play. They're hungry to see what's coming through, and that's a really good way to reach more of them than you would probably do just trying to get people to a London show or a Manchester show or something like that.
Okay, so you've got a tour booked and you've got enough money. Now, yesterday Shay mentioned, or was it Shay actually? No, it was someone in your panel actually, about having enough money and a plan for your next trip, because often, I've seen it before, New Zealand artists go over there, they get a good line in something, and then they disappear, and then the next night, how many bands play in London each night? 100? It's fantastic for that, but you can get easily lost even after you've had something said about you, and so good to plan to come back. But when you do plan the first trip, Teo and I were having a chat yesterday about collaborations and how to really make the most of the trip there, and if some of you have publishers or you have other friends, you made friends in bands, and what you could do about it. So Teo had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's something that people talk a lot about when they say going to LA. I mean, it's a city where you can do a lot of sort of the songwriting, production, collaboration sort of things. But it's true for London. Just try and have an extended period of time there that can be meeting potential partners for your campaigns in the future. That can be artists that you might do some writing sessions with, feature production. If you end up with, I guess, one of those collaborations, getting some exposure in the UK, that's only going to help you next time round. And there is definitely the infrastructure in London to meet artists at the last minute. Lots of studios. Lots of artists have studios that they'd be very happy to sort of have you over if there's something they want to explore with you. We have a writing room. We also have access to studios. So yeah, if you have a manager or publisher or label, anyone that can connect you, and if you can also make those same connections with if you're collaborating, it's a great way to get other value out of that trip beyond the live side.
Yeah, I think reaching out to people that are in the same situation as you or at the same level as you in the UK. So find artists that are making similar music to you that are based in the UK and see if they can help you and see if you can build connections with them, and also offer them like the opportunity to support you in New Zealand, and because they may be looking to play outside of the UK, and there's a reciprocal relationship that you could form there. So but definitely talk to your peers and talk to people that are in the same situation as you, or at the same level, making the same music, but based in the UK. I think people are always up for collaborating.
Great. If we bring it back to media for a moment, we all know BBC Six Music seems to have a lot of influence. I don't know, it still has a lot of influence when it comes to new artists. But what media out there could, some people starting out, try and approach now, and that would be open to taking, to listening to music directly from an artist or a manager here, so they can get a little bit of momentum to get the interest of, say, a booker or an own local PR person. They're, the blogs. The new music blogs in the UK are definitely open to artists getting in touch direct. I would say that now more than ever, it's about being able to show that you've got a clear plan and that there's going to be sort of continuity throughout the next few months. So I would always recommend, and this goes for anyone we discuss and working with, is have several songs at least ready, have a picture of yourself ready, have artwork ready, and when you're contacting those new music blogs, just have a really concise. No one wants a bio from an artist they don't know yet. They want a couple of clear lines as to why they should listen to what you sent them, and to see that you've kind of got things together enough that you can present it really clearly in an email. And yeah, they're open to taking submissions for sure, but I would say it's just tougher than ever right now. Some research, it's sort of quick research to see which outlets are talking about new music. I usually like to suggest just going and even putting into Spotify an artist who you think maybe you sit in a similar lane to, seeing who else comes up as artists within that sphere, and then googling them and seeing who's writing about that artist, and that should give you a really quick shortcut into who's worth approaching. They've all got new submission emails or new music submission emails. Awesome. So if we come back to, we've got the plan now, and we've got the shows, and we can mention the B word, Brexit. I know we've all read the articles that some of the British bands are really struggling, to get to Europe. But if we're just focusing on the UK, how much has Brexit affected the three of you when it comes to what you're doing, or has it not really affected it? Is it something that bands going over there now need to be? How much has it changed for touring, international artists touring in the UK?
I don't think it's changed much. It's always been really difficult to get around the UK from New Zealand. I don't know, but if you do the research and you partner yourself with a good promoter or try and get a good in-house booker, then hopefully they should be able to get you a certificate of sponsorship, which is what you'll need to tour the UK. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, that hasn't changed since Brexit, and it should still be the same. But yeah, it's been a while since I've sort of toured a band around the UK from overseas. I mean, we invite 500 artists to perform at the Great Escape, and I used to have to do COSs for the odd artist and stuff. But that was the same before and after Brexit. So. I think it just predominantly affects UK bands when they're trying to tour Europe, and they have to have carnets and there's like so many more additional costs now. But I think getting into the UK is as difficult as it's always been.
I was going to just add that I think it's maybe more of a combine, or it's a surplus effect on top of what happened with COVID, I think. So there's two things kind of sort of over the last 5 years, I suppose. There's been these two, and I guess what I'd say from the electronic music standpoint, which I guess it's coming from my background, is what I've seen is it has made it much harder for artists, maybe with an electronic background, who previously would have maybe used London as a base, and that's also something that other musicians have done. That to use London as a base is not as attractive because of Brexit. Because well, firstly, you need to be able to have the right to remain, in the UK. But also, if you're going to be, every weekend, DJing in different cities, you have across Europe, which is a great way to sort of have an income as an electronic artist, and as you start. So I think it's the combined effect of Brexit, COVID, and then flights becoming more expensive. That's making the UK a tougher call, I think, in terms of it being your base if you're trying to find a base in Europe. So yeah.
And I think having the addition of all these things and the price of everything going up, it just makes the planning and the strategy beforehand even more important. And in New Zealand, we like to do lots of different things. I know in the UK you get really busy and you focus on one thing because there's a lot to do and the market is huge. And in New Zealand, we like to be the manager and the artist and quickly do the sound on the side of the stage and everything else. And so. This is what Shay talked about yesterday, is the right time to find the people to help your team and to know when you're not the right person to do it. And so going to the UK is probably that's what they need. So I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I think it just in terms of steps and what's right at the right time. It probably is different for every artist, and every artist needs their own plan. But I would say before coming into market in the UK, if you're coming in to tour and you're spending you're probably quite a lot of money now because of the exchange rates and inflation and all that kind of thing, then it's worth thinking about spending that extra on making sure you have a team in place. And if that is from my point of view, if you've put in all that work in the lead up, you've created that momentum, speak to some publicists beforehand, make sure that publicist covers the things that you want. In the UK it works differently. I'm not sure how it works in New Zealand, but in Australia, I'm now based in Australia, long story, but in Australia, your publicist covers radio, TV, print and online. In the UK, publicists, cover, usually for the most part, will cover...
We do everything.
Yeah, okay, same as Australia. In the UK, publicists cover print, and online predominantly, and you'll need a separate radio plugger, someone else for DSPs, all that sort of thing. So it's just worth figuring out exactly what you want from the trip, speaking to people in advance, engaging whoever you think you need to make your trip a success in good time so that they can help you work that momentum in market.
How about if we're looking at artist services companies that are available? Are they good options for people to approach in the UK? Who sort of do lots of different things and take it on, for a fee? Are they a valuable?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, there's quite a few companies that can get that have decent success, and Warp has a label services division that has grown year on year last few years. If you're able to I suppose if you're able to provide a product, I guess that is the main distinction with label services, is that it's on you to sort of bring your album. You're not probably going to get as much financial help to record your albums, but if you have an album that you have recorded and that you're able to get to that point, then I think label service is a great option. Yeah,
and to help momentum. Particularly if there's a little bit, they can help build on what you already have.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to maybe strike a quite optimistic note, maybe, I guess in contrast to what I said previously. I suppose having worked in a medium-sized music company, I guess prior to COVID, one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, of that period of time is that there were about 2 years of, people working remotely, as everyone has experienced. But what that meant in a music company context is that, you couldn't have any more that experience of listening to music collectively. You didn't have it from a live perspective, in a live sense, and you didn't have it in a work sense. You couldn't just 3 or 4 people in a room say you gotta listen to this, or I've just received this, or I think this is really good. And so I think that combined with the context will have probably made a lot of companies hold back a little bit in terms of taking a chance on someone that they've never met, that is maybe based really far away, even more. So therefore, and I guess things have only reopened in that sense in terms of music companies going back to the office. That's really only earlier this year that's started again, and the same is probably true to a certain extent on the live side. At least, I guess anecdotally, people are really keen to go to shows from what I'm hearing in London, and everyone is really going to a lot of things as far as I can tell. So I think what's positive about that is that you have there's almost been like a holdback. There's all been like a 2-year sort of hiatus where there's not been that collective experience, both in terms of going to shows or as music companies who try and discover talent. And so people might be quite on the sort of wanting to invest, wanting to discover something new. So it's probably a good time to approach companies and try and find a partner.
Looking at music, different music genres, are there different cities within the UK where you'd go, okay, you're an electronic artist, so you go to London. Where else should people be going?
I think even London, I guess we didn't touch on that, but you'd have to distinguish different parts of London. Yeah. I think depending on what media you feel like you're trying to target, you can't assume that you've played London. It's North London, East London, South London is almost 3 cities from that perspective.
Cool.
So that's why playing more than one show. So I would say, but maybe that's because why I live there. I would say London is very important, I think. But Glasgow, definitely. London, and then depending on the sort of genre, definitely Bristol, Brighton, Manchester, But you probably...
Yeah, all of those places, yeah.
Yeah, just go everywhere. Don't do that because that'll be expensive. But if you're planning to do different things, do your research to make sure that maybe for the music genre that you're performing, that you are going to the right places. When it comes to universities, see, in New Zealand we used to have these orientation shows. Are there often venues associated with some of the universities that are full at certain times of year, like Cockpit and Leeds maybe, or places like that?
Yeah, that's not so much a thing, I don't think, anymore. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure each university has its own venue or its own nights, but yeah, they're not as prevalent as they used to be, not to my knowledge anyway. But I could be wrong. What do you guys think?
I actually just don't know the answer
No,
to that. I don't think that they're not. I think Adam's right. They're not what they used to be. Cause
If you don't know, then they can't be that.
Yeah, well, I mean, just from a media perspective, they all do have their own publications, but they are not nearly as engaged, and we don't speak to. We don't hook up those interviews with artists who are performing in the way we used to. So I think that's
it's not guaranteed as well. I think when you do a show at a university, there's a misconception that it's going to be really busy because you're taking it to the heart of where all the students are. But I don't think students want to hang out there. Or there doesn't seem to be any student nights like there used to be, like at Goldsmiths or Ulu or other places. In London.
And then when it comes to the importance of when you're playing outside of London, when it comes to media, we discussed that there's media in these big cities, and you said that they probably will more likely to speak to you when you visit.
Yeah, I think again, I'm so boring. Just like forward planning and that's me. Forward planning and research. I feel like I got to say the same thing over and over again. If you're planning a national tour of the UK, or you're also planning to go to like Ireland and Wales and all of those places, there's regional media in each of those cities, and those regional media outlets don't have access to bigger artists the way national publications do, or a lot of London-based publications do. So they are going to be more interested and more excited to talk to artists who are actually visiting their cities. So if you are doing that, you should be either asking your publicist, checking that they do regional PR, because again, that can be a separate thing to a publicist who does national PR. So boring. Checking that they do that, or there's absolutely no reason why you can't be reaching out to those regional publications yourself. Again, it's a really quick one to research. There are less publications in those regions, and they're more hungry to speak to people who are coming to visit them. Yeah,
especially because they'll probably be serviced with a lot of local artists and a lot of local bands. So if they're being contacted by someone from New Zealand, then it becomes, it makes their publication a lot more attractive and a lot more exotic, I guess.
And Adam probably knows about this better than I do, but it does feel like in the UK right now, people are excited about what's going on in Australia and New Zealand, from down this side of the world. It feels like there's a lot of exciting stuff going on, and that is filtering through, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that switched on, and a lot of promoters and publications that would be really keen to hear from artists, especially new artists, direct before there's anybody on board. I think there's a real big appetite for artists from New Zealand and Australia at the moment, for sure.
So I think it seems like you should really pitch at your level. And so don't to get disheartened. If you pitch at some of these regional places that you're going, and you pick up something and build up from there, and don't go, we haven't got on this big radio station, it's all over. It's a new market. You treat it like it would be in New Zealand. You wouldn't go straight to getting on the national news here, and even for artists here, that's difficult. So just like anywhere else, build it up and do your research.
Do your research, definitely, yeah. And trying to make things personal, just try and find the person that is in charge of the new music section and direct it at them, but make sure you're not pitching metal music to an electronic publication. Don't blanket everything. Try and be a little bit more clever, or just pay attention to what you're doing. Really, don't get lazy.
Yeah, and there's a lot, and you'll just be wasting valuable time of your time if you're doing that. So we've covered quite a bit, but I'm guessing there might be quite a few questions that we haven't covered. Has anyone got any questions? Rod?
I was wondering if there's still things like barfly circuit and stuff like that.
I used to book the barfly. Which one? The Camden one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And also the way that we used to do multiple shows on one night. Does that still happen, where the roll in one audience and roll out the next?
Yeah, Not so much. That was mad. We used to do like 15 shows a week at the Barfly. Yeah, we used to do like a gig and a club, and then at the weekend we'd do 3. We'd do like 2 gigs and then a club night. So that was just the way that we were kind of trained to do stuff, to really rinse the venue.
I remember, I think that you even got in the Barfly publication.
Yeah, the Fly magazine. Yeah. No, that doesn't. But there's from that model, there's a lot of other publications. There's so many nowadays, like sort of free publications, and they can be regionally based as well. So there's a lot of like magazines that are similar to the Fly, which was a music publication which was handed out free and had listings in. But they would just be for Liverpool, or just be for Manchester, or just be for, Bristol. So you should try and find out what those publications are, and then pitch ideas for interviews and stuff. But I mean, like, feel free to just pitch ideas to them, I'd say, because like, if you're serving up a good idea, then the chances are they might take it, and especially if you're coming over from New Zealand, that would be a good, interesting take that they're probably not being served up. But yeah, that Barfly circuit doesn't exist anymore. The toilet circuit, which was technically the Barfly circuit, does exist. Yeah, like. But I'm happy to give a list of venues if anybody wants to take my email address down. I could put together a list of venues in each city, and I'm going to regret saying that, aren't I?
Give it to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't mind doing that, and it would just take a few seconds to pull out all those email addresses of the in-house bookers for each of those venues.
Well, yeah, the ones that may be open to hearing from people.
Yeah. But there's loads in London, but then there's also loads around London and sort of, in other cities. But yeah, those publications tend to be city-based now. There's not really, other than DIY magazine, there's not really a national sort of publication as such.
Does anyone else?
Would that include like King Tut's and places like that sort of stuff?
Yeah, King Tut's.
So, for everyone else, I'm talking about like the Whammy and Wine Cellar.
Yeah.
Places of each type.
It's like 200.
There's hundreds of them.
Yeah, like 200 and below. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing my husband and I did last night. We wrote a list of the venues that we can ask which still exist and which don't after this. Yeah, please.
I was just wondering, so say if maybe your track gets picked up by BBC Radio introducing their spinning it in London, do you have any maybe advice around how you can sort of capitalise on that and just sort of have a moment with that, or maybe, I don't know, do you have any advice around how to make the most of it, I guess?
I think like any in-market momentum like that is the moment to seize to push into those other places that you've been either already approached, or if you feel like that's coming, wait until that moment, because if you can pop that in a really concise email and like make it obvious right up the top, people are more likely to pay attention, essentially. Like, especially from a media point of view, any indication that something's moving in one area is a reason for someone to stop and take notice. And I think the thing to remember when you're getting in touch with journalists or new music editors or live editors is that they probably receive, like, I don't know, over a couple hundred emails every single day. So, really clear subject line, even with the most exciting news in the subject line, and then just like super concise information. But yeah, I think like, and that's the way we work for our clients as well. Like, the moment something exciting happens in one area is the moment to start pushing into those other spaces. So like, in terms of media, I'd say like that's the best time to do that.
You're probably quite attractive to a PR agency or a booker, and to start, that could be a good time to maybe start looking at your team for those that things you can't do yourself. Any other questions? Yeah, Greg?
Not really a question, just wondering where you interact with what Pierre was saying about spending enough time. I think there's always been a temptation with a lot of Kiwi artists that I've experienced over the years of, I'm going to London for a week, what can I do in a week? It's like, go for a month, go for 6 months, now the young Kiwis can actually spend 3 years with the UK. Maybe you don't have to spend 3 years, but that length of time spent in the UK. It is. It's
Just embrace it and become.
It's not like touring New Zealand. There's a lot of ground to cover, and spend the time to make those contacts, do the songwriting sessions, make it more about not just doing the gigs, but actually spending the time with the writing.
It's kind of like what Katie is doing at the London over there.
Sorry.
Katie.
Yeah, Mild Orange has shifted there. We've got Molly Payton there. Just embrace it. I mean, even.
I think creating, like, just to these points, like, creating and like work on creating a network elsewhere, in the same way you have a network at home, and like that obviously takes time. We all know that it takes time to form relationships, to build networks, and I think if you plan to stay somewhere for a few months, then people are going to give you the time, and that's going to be reciprocated, and that's the way to build things organically, I think, in market.
Yeah, and you just become a part of the scene anyway. So you don't become you're there for a day. You know, Rodney is one of those people that did that, and even when we were there, where there were other bands, they just became a part of everything. And so when opportunities came up, they were there and they could take them. So save up, shift. Any other? There was someone? Yeah, Matt?
I have one, because sometimes you see with publicists, they'll say, when are you going to be in market? And then when you're talking to someone about coming over to tour, they're saying, where's your PR? And that can become a unresolvable chickeny-eggy type situation. How would you recommend, obviously there has to be a spark, and you've talked about this, but how would you resolve that issue? And what are you seeing as often working the best as an icebreaker, let's say?
I think the when are you going to be a market question is, I think you're speaking to someone who's at least decent at their job if they're asking that, because with the best will in the world, it's so competitive for space at media in the UK, and media will naturally gravitate to domestic talent, again, talent with an ecosystem and a network, because they've been in market doing this for a while. So we ask this of pretty much all of our international clients, and actually there's someone we've been working with for a while that we actually just put on pause because we can't do anything more until we know what the plan is. And that doesn't mean that we're going to wait till they arrive in market, but we want to see a plan, because we know that we need that plan for media to take them seriously and engage properly. So I guess it is a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but there's no reason that an artist can't be laying a really strong foundation themselves, approaching lower level sites, music writers, new music writers, and building things themselves, then starting to speak to publicists. And I think a good publicist, if you've got a plan, and even if you don't know exactly when you're going to be in market, you're this plan is coming together now, I think in theory they should engage with you if they feel like it's the right match. I mean, I don't know how that sits in other areas.
If there's any other questions?
Actually, just a supplementary one a little bit is, how much are you finding in the sort of post-COVID, everyone's burned out, slammed, exhausted period, that stuff is flowing up that ecosystem from smaller blogs to bigger blogs to national publications, and people having the time. And Adam, are you having time to go to 200 capacity venues and look at bands, or are you so exhausted running a festival you don't have time to do that? And are you finding that stuff's still moving upwards to the system?
Yeah, of course. No, I hate going to stadium shows and the bigger gigs. I much prefer to go to 100 capacity shows. But yeah, I tend to go to a minimum of 3 a week. So we could do, and that's now. But when it gets into touring period in November time, I could go to one every night, maybe twice a night. So but that's just because there's a lot on. But yeah, so you always see the progression for sure. So you wouldn't necessarily, if you were to come over, you could play 100 capacity venue, and then if that goes well and you sell that out, or you get 50 people down, then you can use that to tell the next promoter in the bigger venue and try and build momentum that way. But that's it still works. Yeah, playing live and there's still a lot of growth there, and there's still people writing about new music all the time, if not more so than ever, really. And then
I'm really thinking about the particular moment we're in. My first gig in London, there was 6 people there, but one of them was breakage, and I've been back since many times and been to Fabric and all sorts. But I'm wondering now, in the situation we're in, where there's been COVID and everyone is really, there's so much on. It's good to hear that you're still going out.
Yeah, who's not going out? People aren't going out.
Well, I think in New Zealand it's taken a while. We've been in a different timing from you guys with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I work. The Great Escape is owned by Live Nation and Festival Republic. Within Live Nation, there's about 4 or 5 different other promotions companies, and as a collection of people, we're just about to have the busiest year ever, and next year looks twice as busy. And that's not because it's a backlog of shows and a sort of bottleneck that's now kind of being released. It's just that more people are playing live. There's more on. And that's from grassroots up to stadium. So, yeah, the live music sector is as busy as ever. And people are definitely going out. Yeah, everybody I know is going out.
Good, hang out with Adam. We'll wrap it up there, but just to end, is there any sort of... Teo's going to say something first.
Before I forget, so I'm assuming there's a few APRA members in the room. So APRA have a Writer Relations person in London who is really knowledgeable across all parts of the industry, has been helping a lot of artists, obviously from New Zealand and Australia, to find a booking agent, any part of the team, someone, so definitely if you're planning something, if you have questions, even before the trip, is someone that that they have that resource to sort of to potentially give you some leads, So yeah, just get in touch with APRA and ask them, and I'm sure they can put you in touch.
That's a great tip. Use everyone you can. Everyone's got friends there. Ask them what they're reading. Ask them where they're going, what they're listening to.
I would get in touch with your local export office as well if you're looking to leave the country and get some advice from them, because they may be able to help with funding, or they may be able to help with contacts, or answer any questions, or help and support. So they are a great resource.
And just to end, is there any sort of current trends happening in Britain that might not have reached us yet that we should all be aware of? Musically, Mercury Music Prize, all those.
A drum and bass is
coming back, is it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I say a drum and bass resurgence, but I guess it's just drum and bass, isn't it? Because not everybody's as old as me. But I think with streaming platforms and stuff, there's just the way people are listening to music, it's a lot less tribal, and people. It's just a great time to be making music. There's lots of opportunities and lots of platforms to get your music out onto. Whether it can make you any money is probably a different panel, but I think there's a lot going on.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Got me walking in my home hoodie to the corner dairy. Socks holy like my pockets, yeah, I think that's how I lost my money. Still got enough for the twin pack bounties. Maybe even grab $1 baggie for the honey. I think that's how I got so bumpy. I'm still a shorty, like short leg shorty, my pet name Coggy. And I got that Kyle Lowry booty. And I got that so heavy, made my knee a little woozy. Yeah, I got that Kyle Lowry booty. Guess I got it from my daddy. Yeah, I'm a baddie. Got it from my daddy. Sad and lonely, but I'm looking cute. I'm pink like Tommy. Got the sheets to match so I can sleep pretty. My red wine bubbly on my bedside beside. Give the recipe to all my friends, now they're having babies. Well, I'm just trying to be happy. I'm in so much pain, but like my merch, I'm smiling. I'm about to crash. Ooh, let's hope I land like Sully, I do. Let's hope I land. Ooh, hope I land. I got that Kyle Lowry booty. Yeah. So heavy, made my knee a little woozy. My back, yeah.
Just be honest, baby. When you look in the mirror, does the vision drive you crazy? 'Cause darling, I can hold you down the way you do. What you do is amazing. Got me driving around the block a few times, and shit don't faze me. You can blame me. It hurts so good to be so bad. I misunderstood. I guess I'm sad, but I know.
Check, check, can you hear me?
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Hello.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yo, going global.
Of course you're leaving after this.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Good-o. Hey, team. Hey. Hola, como esta? Thanks for the shush. That's beauty. We are running a little late today, so I don't want you to miss out on the pearls of wisdom that are coming from these very wonderful mouths from across the world. Beautiful. Thanks. So as you've probably read and why you're probably here, what we're going to talk about today is getting your music into the world and how it can be done by a click of a button, but how do you get it heard? In a world where there are thousands of songs, like something like crazy, like 60,000 each week, albums and tours announced every day, our panel share their tips, strategies to help music services, outlets and journalists pay attention to your music. So our panellists today, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves a little bit because they're actually amazing. And if you understand the depth of their knowledge and experience, I really think you're going to pay really acute attention. Start with the lovely Chloe Malik.
Hello. I don't know how much history you want. I'll give it to you quick. So I started life in the music industry in Sydney, where I worked at the Music Network, actually, when it was a different magazine, MTV, and then BMG. About 18 years ago, I moved to the UK, where I worked at Universal in their in-house press office. I was then head of press at RCA, which is a Sony sub-label in the UK. Lived in the US for a bit doing various things, and then 10 years ago I set up Inside Out with my business partner. We've grown the company over the last 10 years, and we look after artists like Lady Gaga, Robin, Christine and the Queens, George Ezra, Lord. So quite a few. But our real passion is working with developing artists and new artists. So we've worked with a lot of those artists from the very beginning. We've also worked with artists like Wolf Alice and Churches and Alt J, Bieber Doobie, who's starting to do really good things. And about a year ago we set up in Australia, and we are now working with some really amazing local artists who are coming through, artists like Becca Amani, Aisha Madden. We've started working with Lord's younger sister just recently as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. See, told you. Pretty fancy, hey. And next is our lovely Sam Wicks, who we used to work together in different organisations back in a wee while ago. We were reminiscing our first meeting, may I say, 20 years ago. And Sam was quite a fresh little journalist. Rip it up.
That would have been RNZ.
It was RNZ.
A Dizzy Rascal interview that Lisa lined up, yeah.
Dizzy Rascal, boy in the corner. The naughty boy missed all of his Australian appointments and interviews the day before, so he was on the best behaviour the next day when he was in New Zealand. And I'd not met Sam before, but he sounded really cool and like he knew his hip-hop and he was going to be good. So turns up at the hotel and did a blinding interview and has not failed to do blinding interviews from here on out and is now at Double J in Australia. But I'll let you do your own intro of where you've been and what you've done.
So I had my start with RNZ Music. I was the founding producer on Music 101 and went on to I was the editor on a handful of New Zealand music magazines, Real Groove, that some folks might remember.
Such a good magazine.
Groove Guide, and a short-lived publication called Volume magazine. Returned to RNZ Music, where I was the senior producer, and then I crossed the ditch in 2016 to be a producer at Double J and a podcaster at ABC. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And last but never least, Poppy Reid, managing editor of Bragg Media from Australia, who we first met when Poppy was here doing going global a couple of years ago, 2018, 2019.
This is my second one.
Yeah.
So happy to be back. Kia ora.
Thank you.
So I got my start as an intern at the Music Network, similar to where Chloe started too, and I worked my way up and I got to editor, and then I think I was there for like 7 years, a long time. And then the Bragg Media CEO, well, he hadn't set up the Bragg Media yet, Luke. He hit me up and he was chatting to a bunch of people from the industry who worked as journalists and trying to work out like how the media industry works. And I offered some advice. And then a couple of weeks later, he said, will you come over and start the Bragg Media with me? And so I've been there for, we launched in 2017, so a few years now, and I'm editor-in-chief now, and we've got Rolling Stone, which we do a magazine with as well. We've got Variety, which we haven't launched a magazine with, thank God, because I think I would have a panic attack if we did that this year, so maybe next year. And we've got Tone Deaf, the Music Network, the Bragg, and there's a bunch of other sites that we also represent as well. And it's so fun.
Beautiful. So what our aim of the panel is today is to give you an overview of the current Australian market, and also we can get a bit of the UK market. If you were in the last panel, there may be some crossover, but there's nothing wrong with hammering home the best hot tips. But we will be focusing from a promo perspective, and we'll discuss new trends our guests are observing in their respective countries and markets. Many of you might be thinking about that possibility of touring in the UK or Australia, but also trying to get your releases seen and heard over there as well. So we'll try and provide some practical advice and promo step-by-step information for you. If we have time at the end, we can open up for a few questions from the audience, but please remember there is a speed networking opportunity this afternoon at 4 p.m. in this space. You'll have an opportunity for a fast 2 minutes with the speakers, so think about your questions carefully if we don't get to do that today. So we're going to assume that everyone in the room here has some interest in touring or promoting your releases in your territory, in these territories. So what my first question would be to Chloe and Sam Poppy, how has your approach to promotion, and Sam and Poppy, what are you looking for? What you will feature in your respective medias, how has that changed in the current environment post-COVIDian times? Well, we're still slightly in COVIDian times, but how has that changed for you?
I guess it's just talking about COVID-y times. It's slightly different in different territories is the most interesting thing. Well, not the most interesting, but it's something to just remember. So the UK is in a slightly different space to Australia and to New Zealand, I think. So there's just always that to keep in mind. But I think more so than ever, it's about forward planning and having everything ready before you really make that big push. Media, definitely in the UK and probably in Australia. I'll let Sam and Poppy talk to that though. Was really impacted by COVID. Budgets were really cut. There's less people doing more work, but there's more new music than ever. So you've got people who love new music, really wanting to hear and take it all on, but just trying to manage that. So I think it's about having everything ready. It's about having a really clear plan that is probably like a 3 to 6 month plan, which is what we like to take to media when we're talking about a new artist. Knowing what you're about, being able to sum yourself up in a couple of lines. Having a picture, having some artwork, and having a couple of songs at least.
Yeah, great. So 3 to 6 months. Woo. Did you hear that, everybody? 3 to 6 months. So from the media perspective, are you wanting artists to approach you 3 to 6 months out?
Well, we have a print magazine as well with Rolling Stone, which is here in New Zealand as well. And so I love a long lead. Yeah. Absolutely. It's in the pandemic, because we did launch in the pandemic, we launched our first magazine in 2020 in May with Tones and I on the cover. And, we as a business, it was an interesting conversation to go, are we really going to put out a magazine in this pandemic when news agencies are not even open and people are in lockdown? And we saw the media landscape was kind of gutted in a lot of ways, especially in music. And we saw so many publications close, which have now come back. Vice closed, BuzzFeed, a bunch of others. And we took a gamble and went, let's continue, let's move forward, let's not get rid of any staff, let's push forward. And it paid off. Luke, our CEO, has said, He said, like, people think we're really smart, like, oh, you know, while everyone was laying down, we stood up. But in reality, he just winged it and hoped for the best. We lost $1 million in 3 days in the pandemic. We had 6 months of money in the coffers. And he was like, well, let's die fast if we, let's just go. Like, if we're going to die, let's die fast. Let's just go hard. But in terms of timelines and things, our magazine needs to go to print a month before it hits stands and hits our subscribers. So I was going out to media going, can I please have this album review and all the assets? Oh, sorry, can I please have the album advanced stream and all the assets and everything, you know, like 3 months before. And pre-pandemic, that would have been a very difficult question, especially for the major labels. But during the pandemic, they've had all these assets just waiting because artists have held things off until things leveled out a little bit. So definitely love a long lead. That's my long way of saying it.
Fantastic.
I remember those long leads well from my magazine days, and fortunately now I'm thinking a month to 2 weeks is all I need. You know, I want to know when a tour is happening, when a song's being released, and depending on what the campaign is, what the project is, I'm happy to have that drip fed before the project is released or before a tour kicks off. Thinking about how Double J lived through the pandemic and those first few weeks of March, we kind of didn't know what the move was going to be, not only what the world was going to look like, but we knew we weren't going to have guests in studio, and that was pretty much 2 years without guests in studio, bands playing. So a big part of discovery was actually having an artist face-to-face, whether you're catching up with a coffee, seeing that show, having them in studio, talking to one of your presenters. So it meant that it was really stripped back in terms of the point of discovery. It was the song and it was the story, you know. And there's kind of a sort of a purity to that, you know. When the NBA was playing without audiences, I remember Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was talking about the purity of that. So all it was basketball with no crowd, and there was kind of a purity with all you knew was that backstory and that song. And if that got you there, nothing else was going to cook it for you in terms of getting on the radio, you know.
Yeah, back to the song, eh? Yeah.
Back to the song.
Back to the song. So speaking of that, and they're coming to you 3 to 6 months ahead.
Actually, just to clarify, I more so meant like as an artist, you should know what your plan is 3 to 6 months. So we would, in an ideal world, we will go a couple of months ahead, but there isn't always. We understand.
As publicists, we like to get assets 3 months out as well.
Yeah.
How often does that happen? Not very often.
Never.
But that's our goal. So speaking of assets, if that sounds like a bit of jargon to you, so what we're talking about with assets is the tools that you have in your toolbox that can help these people decide whether they want to talk to you, feature you, run a nice review of your album, etc. So I would like the professionals to talk about Chloe. Not talk about Chloe, but Chloe, could you talk about...
I can do that too. You don't want me to do that.
We've only just met. What are the most essential assets that artists... If you're thinking about a New Zealand artist coming into an international territory, whether that be Australia or the UK, that you want to see in their toolbox promoting either a release, a tour, or perhaps they're showcasing at Great Escape?
I should start by saying, like, that word assets, I know, is an awful word. It's so reductive. Like, artists can spend so much time crafting songs and a video and beautiful artwork, and someone comes in and refers to it as assets. But that is, like, the practical term that we all use. So, yes, I think for us, it is just really, you know, having more than one song so that someone can really understand the breadth of what you're about. We know you're not always going to have a full album, but, you know, 2 to 3 songs. And, like, for us to start working with a client, even a brand new artist, we would always want to hear a few songs. We want to make sure we understand what that artist is about. I would say some other really sort of basic tools is a picture, so that people understand what it is you're saying about yourself as an artist. That's not always, you know, a straight up picture, eyes to camera, although publicists and media probably always prefer that. Disclaimer. You know, artwork if you can, and then just a really succinct bio that encompasses any successes you've had, any radio play, any gigs you've had, and probably just a couple of lines about what you're about. And I think having that sort of toolkit allows you to go out into the world and probably reach media in the right way. But if you've got a team, if you've got a PR, that will help them make sure that they're selling you in the right way.
It just gives you the best chance of coverage as well, So if I get an email and there's things missing, or the link to the music isn't working, or the image they've given me is really small and I need to chase them up and follow them up, it's harder for me to pitch something into the team, So I've got a team of writers and a news editor who have massive, lofty targets. It's literally how we're able to keep the lights on and keep the money coming in. So we have our own KPIs. We have low capacity. We don't have that many staff. And so if the assets aren't all there and I'm chasing, it just steals me away from me being able to support the team and give them the stuff when they need it. And we like to be first with things in media as well, So if someone else has run it and I'm still chasing assets and it's a competitor of ours, then we're really looking at, okay, what is the new angle then? And if I don't have that new angle, I might not be able to pitch it in and get it covered by my team. So definitely check all your links and make sure all your assets are what that publication needs.
And for you, Sam, at radio?
I need all of those things, but I think what's helpful for me is some kind of personalisation in the pitch. I want to know whoever's pitching me, whether it's an artist or a publicist, knows what Double J is about, knows the shows that I work on, knows the sort of artists that we play. And that's something that's pretty easy to do in terms of even, you don't even listen to the show, study the playlist. If you're reaching out for the first time, you can say, hey, I saw that you played this artist, this is someone that I toured with, or, demonstrate that you know who you're pitching to is really helpful,
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of pitching, the pitch, it's such a crucial thing. And we were talking just before about a couple of clangers that we have all come across, and perhaps we'll give you a short list of please don'ts in your pitch. Poppy?
Yeah, please get my name right. Please get the publication name right. I've been called poopy before, so just putting that out there. I find that very funny, though. There's no judgment from me, but you do kind of give me an out if I'm really busy and don't have time to reply. And I said this yesterday on the panel that I was on, but I'll say it again. But if a publicist is pitching me or an artist is pitching me and they've just sent me their assets and their song and something that they want us to cover, and then at the end they say, let me know what you think, it's really tricky for me to respond, because it doesn't actually matter what I think, it matters what our readers think. And if you do your research and curate your pitch, it makes my job so much easier. So if you know that Tone Deaf has a thing called Record of the Week and they've covered artists that are similar to you, or you want to get to know, which is a Q&A that we do on Tone Deaf, and you pitch for that directly, then it's much more easier for me to know exactly what you want, see whether we have capacity, and just make it happen very quickly, because I get around 100 emails every hour. It's a lot.
That's a really good piece of gold. Write that one down about how to do that.
Poppy, you mentioned this yesterday as well, and I think it's such a good point, is just have a look at what the person who you're getting in touch with has done recently, or what the station has done recently, and open your email with, I really liked that piece you wrote on, or I really liked that show you produced, and immediately, everyone loves to hear something nice about themselves. It's just human nature. It's immediately that person is probably going to read on, whereas otherwise they may not.
Especially if it's genuine. Maybe don't make that up.
Yeah.
That feels like the first barrier to entry, right? This person gets what we're about. Let's read on, because they might have something to offer. And at the risk of sounding a little precious, I mentioned personalisation. You also don't want to be overly familiar. If it's someone you've never met before, you have no track record with, maybe the details about what did you get up to in the weekend, or it's kind of superfluous. You want to be polite. You want to have grease the wheels a bit, but then get to the message.
How do you feel about it coming the other way too? Because I've had publicists reach out and tell me about their entire weekend and what's happening with their pet, and I've never met them before, and it's 3 paragraphs of what's going on with them. It's a great story. Love a good story, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. And phone calls too, when it comes in the form of a phone call. Yeah.
I'm just taking notes over here now, by the way.
Excellent pictures always come from Chloe, FYI.
That's not being grumpy about it. It's just you're talking about hundreds of emails coming your way. You're time poor. Yeah. You need to cut to the chase. And, yeah.
So that's hashtag don't be creepy. So a couple of things that we've always been told are basics that artists should have. And how important is it for artists to have their own website these days rather than just social media? That used to be a huge thing. Is that still a thing?
Website, perhaps not so much, would be what I would say. Instagram and some sort of, I feel like I could get crucified depending on the room for saying this, but some sort of social profile is important. I think the first thing that a lot of media will do is go and see what you're about, and that might be clicking through to your Instagram. If you've been building on your TikTok and that looks good, it might be that. To have no profile across socials, I think, is a mistake. Website less so. I know that they can be expensive and they can be a lot of work to maintain. I think it probably also depends on market to market. Like, I know in Australia, Facebook is bigger for people going to see, probably get basic information like tour dates, things like that, like less personality but more just functionality. In the UK, probably a little bit less so, but yeah, I think it's important.
I think the other benefit of having, and I am all about social media for sure, I think it's a great opportunity to build your community, especially in COVID, when you can't go out and play shows and meet your fans, it's a great way to bring your fans together. But I think a website could be a good way to build an owned and operated audience as well. If you launch a newsletter, perhaps you can do that on socials, I'm not sure, but it's a great way to launch a newsletter, offer interesting, bespoke things that you can't get elsewhere, and ownership seems weird, but have that get very clear connection to your fans. You have their emails now at this point. That's a really great asset to have.
That is so true, and you can use that in your digital advertising as well.
That is a good point. Also, I guess D2C for selling merch comes from a website, so actually just ignore what I said.
If you can, a website can be a fancy hub. Sam, do you use them?
I do. I want to see if someone has a track record, what their story is. If it's not a website and it's Facebook, I want all the details there. So I want to click on About and see who I can email about getting you on a show or finding out more about your music. So that's really important to keep updated. And I think the email thing is really important too once you have that captive audience. I remember a New Zealand musician, Dudley Benson, who I'm a huge admirer of. His email list was fantastic. It was so personal and beautifully put together, and that stuff counts for a lot once you have someone on your list and they're part of what you're doing.
It's super fan territory, isn't it?
And you can build that on socials too. I had this amazing experience where someone said, do you guys know the band Fundamentals? And the artist Tucker. So I was told that if you follow him on Instagram, that he sends you a personalised voice message. And I was like, I've got to try this. And I got this beautiful voice message. Hi, Poppy. Thank you so much for following me. I hope you're having a beautiful day. The sun is out here in Sydney where I am. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining my community. You're going to expect things like this, this, and this. I just wanted to reach out and say thanks for coming on board. Something, I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, I'm a lifer now. I'm sorry. Whatever you do, I'm in.
Yeah. That's amazing. Don't all go and do that. That'll get old real quick. In this day and age, do you think, Poppy, in particular for big music magazines, Rolling Stone, obviously, we've lost so many music magazines here, we're decimated. Even our beloved Time Out, that was a weekly Thursday music entertainment, has got. But what influence do you think they still have? And obviously Tone Deaf is a pretty powerful in Australia. Are Are they still powerful? Are they making a difference?
Of course, I'm going to say yes. I mean, but we do, like, the Bragg media and our sites that we have reach 20% of New Zealand and 30% of Australia. So there's that reach and engagement thing. I've also noticed that when we do campaigns around tours and stuff, we're able to move the dial, which is wild to me. Like, we're actually able to sell tickets, and we can track that through our links and everything, which is amazing. We've had a few promoters come to us who are struggling to sell tickets, and we'll do a campaign, different types of content, and we were able to see how that's helped that tour sell out. But then from an emotional perspective, which is where I prefer to come from, I think media is so important in terms of offering fans more context into an artist. I think an artist only has a few touch points on how they can really communicate who they are. It's their live show, it's their music, it's a couple of interviews that they might do, it's their social media. But then when a media publication takes the time to get to know an artist and tell their story in a way that they know their readers will listen, well, one, it's a huge privilege. It's such a huge responsibility to get to tell an artist's story, and it's something that I definitely don't take lightly. But I also think that it really helps fans dive in and just get under the hood and really see what that music is about. And yeah, it's something I love. That's why I love music media. Yeah,
for sure. And Sam, for radio, particularly perhaps with Double J, is that I know it has been a great source of new music. Is it continuing to be so? Is that a modem that they cover for? And
for sure, and I'm very fortunate. I mean, that's Double J's MO. You know, it was set up as a spin-off for Triple J, but 70% is about discovery. So 70% of what we're playing is new music. 30% being, you know, music artists that a Triple J audience was raised on. You know, so and obviously being non-commercial media, we're sort of we can just pursue that. We're shielded from, you know, we're not looking to turn a profit. So, yeah.
Important stuff.
That's right. Yeah. And also the demographic's interesting as well. 30 to 50-year-olds who are about new music. They're looking to, it's a way of, you know, if you've grown out of Triple J, there is a home for you there, you know, and we can introduce you to what you need to know about. Six Music, I guess, is the right comparison as far as British radio goes.
Right.
So if 70% is new music, does that mean that myth of, oh, you're not cool enough for Triple J anymore, we'll put you on Double J? Because it was like 10 years ago when that was a very big piece of conversation around Double J versus Triple J. Does that mean that that's just bullshit?
I think they're such different worlds. I mean, the Triple J of 2022 is so different than the Triple J that a Double J audience grew up with, you know. So I can't speak to what's happening at Triple J, but they're very different beasts, and a lot of thought goes into which artist belongs where. It's very rare you'll get an artist that'll sit across both networks. You know, maybe say Thelma Plum would be someone who'd sit across it, or yeah. So you know, they're different world. They work side by side, but very different audiences. Yeah.
Chloe, a little question for you now. In 2022. How much easier is it to find a media champion for the artists you are working with? How much harder is it to keep them all interested, and especially with follow-up coverage? Because we do the follow-ups, don't we?
We do the follow-up.
We are the follow-up
We
queens.
love a follow-up, though.
Oh, do you know? Do you love a follow-up?
Need a follow-up, I should say.
The second follow-up, okay. Third follow-up probably means just stop now.
And what's the frequency? How often are you checking? Just checking back in?
Just checking back in. Yeah. Hi, it's me again. Sorry. Here's like a box of chocolates. I think it's easier and it's harder to find those champions. What a useless answer. That's typical publicist for you. I think there's more new music than there's ever been before, and just as we touched on earlier, COVID has meant that sort of budgets at various publishing houses and titles has been cut. So the team isn't always as big as it used to be. That said, obviously, within media, there's always a huge appetite for new music. So I think research and or having like a great publicist on your team will help you find that champion. A good PR will know who likes what, not even in terms of outlet specifically, but also in terms of specific journalists. They will also know how to talk to those journalists, what they're interested in. They may be having conversations with them about lots of things at the same time. So I think that's how you find the champion. But continuing that coverage, I think it's all about a cohesive plan. I think what we look for is, I don't know, the days of sort of a page here changing the game for an artist or a page there, like I guess, in Australia, it's like, some coverage in Rolling Stone, or in the UK, like Rolling Stone again, or, NME, like having that coverage is great, but beyond that, you really need like a really cohesive plan for your team to sell you in and to keep that interest going, but also for media to want to engage. They need to believe in what you're doing as an artist and know that you've got a plan that they can buy into, because page space and online space is precious and people's time is precious. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, to amplify that point, absolutely. You want it, when you're being presented with a new artist, you don't want to feel that the song they're offering, it's a one and done scenario. You want to know that this is an artist that you can champion in your outlet and ride with them, So to have that plan in place from the jump is really important for me.
And it makes you as media look really good if you're like, yeah, we jumped onto the first single and look where they are now, like when really they were always amazing and going to achieve incredible things.
Just a little addendum to that, as you probably know, we don't really have that many music publicists in New Zealand. There's about 10 of us, and there's a lot of you, and you're all very good. So there is a lot of this stuff that you do need to do yourself. And as a little tip that comes up quite frequently with finding your media champions, if anyone ever writes about you, I was talking to an artist yesterday. Yes, I got a double page in the local courier down in Christchurch, and I said, who's that? Oh, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Get your phone out, show me the thing. So we found the writer's name, and I said, you go and find that person and you send them a thank you, and then when you have your next single, you're going to email them back and go, thank you very much for that, and here's my new single, it's coming out, and this is my plans for the future, or when I'm going to tour, blah, blah, blah. You're going to just follow up on all of that. Don't just leave it lie. They're humans too, and they'd love to hear from you, particularly if they wrote about you first. It's always a goodie. So I just want to talk about, also I want to grill in on these two in particular for publicists. We want to know, how do we get your attention? So Poppy and Sam, I'm super keen to get you to reveal what makes you open that email, pay close attention when in a meeting with a band, an artist, etc. And then Chloe, I'm super keen to get you to share all those secrets about how you accomplish that, because you're clearly very, very good at it. But maybe first, if we could talk about connections. How important and essential is it that someone you know and trust contacts you?
That's a huge help. That's absolutely a huge help. Soaked Oats, a New Zealand band that you work with, we had them on Double J a few years back. We weren't playing their records, but you had come to me saying, this is a band you need to know about, here's their track record, here's what they're doing in New Zealand. And truthfully, a big reason why the interview was placed is because we have a working relationship and I respect your taste, and you were able to work
Thanks
that
for
angle.
that.
Yeah, it counts for something, So if you're at the stage of your career where you're ready to take a publicist on, it's so important to get that right. You're not looking to hire someone who you might find out has a record of throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, Find out, for example, in the Australian market, a band that you respect, who they might be working with. You can kind of reverse engineer these things and find the right person for the job that way. And if they have a working relationship with, these different media outlets that you're looking to be with, then that's part of the job done anyway.
That's a great point. And does it count for anything if you've been on a support for a certain act that you may have been interested in or played on or featured in your media, that you've played with them on tour? Does that help kind of bridge that connection a little bit if you don't have a direct one?
Yeah, for me, absolutely. Like if you like this artist, it's a really solid recommendation. I mean, the fact that I haven't been able to see so many shows in the past couple of years isn't helpful, or meet face to face with a publicist or a band. But that's all opening up again. So that sort of stuff really counts for something.
And for me, I think having a publicist, depending what stage you are in your career, can be quite a luxury. It can be quite expensive, and I did not know that there were only about 10 music publicists here, so wow, you must be extremely busy. But when I get pitched by a publicist who I know, it means that they know the publications that I work with, and it means that they're going to pitch accordingly, and they're going to curate it, and they're going to know, what's going to work and how to pitch and where they could be placed. And I'll be real, I rely a lot on publicists. I rely on them to tell me, what they think is going to work on my sites based on what's worked in the past. I rely on them to pitch me artists that will work on our sites. They're not pitching me things that are just not quite right for certain things. So I'm very heavily reliant on publicists. Yeah, it's a big deal. But I do understand it's a bit of a luxury.
It is a bit of a luxury. And I think that references back to Chloe's earlier talk actually about the doing your research and be very granular about your research. Google Sheets are your friend. Keep a database going and put in also things about columns that they work on, shows that they work on, what they've covered before. Get really into that mind frame when you go there.
And I think the spray and pray approach doesn't work. They just send it to everybody and just say, hi, this is here, like we've talked about it. Yeah, use their name, use the publication's name, think about it. And that does mean that you probably will be pitching to a lot less publications because you don't have the time. But I think go for around 7 and be realistic about it and realise you might only get 3 of that 7 that you pitch to.
Chloe.
I actually forgot the question for a moment, but I remember. No, I did mention this in the talk before, but it's just like it's my absolute bugbear that PR agencies take new artists' hard-earned money when they won't necessarily be able to deliver. Like, it absolutely breaks my heart. So I think if you're not sure whether you're ready for a publicist, like, talk to other people in the industry if you can and ask their advice. Some agencies will take money and know that they can't deliver, or that with the best intentions they just won't be able to. So I think never be shy to grill a potential publicist. Like, ask them what their targets would be, talk to them about the last few campaigns they've run, like, make sure that they're going to deliver for you. And even if you're not going to have sort of tangible coverage to show that you understand the process that they're going through, like, to get your music out into the world. Sorry, that's me off my soapbox.
No, that's very valid.
In terms of tips when pitching, I think we've kind of touched on quite a lot of these things already. But just, first of all, have a cohesive plan. Know what you want to say. Have music ready. Do your research. Know who you're pitching to. Like, it's so easy to just click on a website now and see what a publication is about. And if you want to take it up a level and get a little bit stalkery, like, look at the editor's Instagram, look at the producer's Instagram, look at other people who work there, see what they're talking about, see what bands they've been to see. You can, so much information is out there. Do all of that research before you get in touch with someone, and then just keep your pitch super succinct. Like, Poppy, what did you say? You get 100 emails an hour? It's like, if you think that you're one of those 100 emails, you just want to be clear and succinct, because the chance of someone having the time to read a really lengthy email all the way down to the bottom is probably unlikely. I think a follow-up is not a bad thing. You guys agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. A follow-up is never a bad thing, but I would usually suggest, if you're going to follow up, find a new piece of information to share. There might not actually be a new piece of information to share, but there's a way to finesse something you've already said or something that's happened recently to just make it fresh and give that extra email a reason to have landed in somebody's
Which might be radio play or a review on a website, or
yeah, it could be a jump in your social. It could there's it could be anything, and we definitely find ways to create new news when it's needed. So yeah. I think that's probably my tip.
Yeah, awesome. I think there's a little tip that we advise our New Zealand artists is if you are emailing New Zealand media, and I'd be interested to hear if this is helpful or just puts you off, but in the subject line is always put NZ artist, because that will make people like Jesse Mulligan will always open that email, and a lot of the bigger media will also open and go, okay, that's local content, I'm keen on that. I don't know if that's a help or a hindrance when we're going international.
A help for me now, because now that we've launched Rolling Stone here in New Zealand, that's part of my remit now. I want to cover more. I want our magazine to be reflective of both countries. So, yeah, it's definitely something we want to do more. Yeah, and we recently put a job ad out for a freelancer, a local music freelance writer here. So, yeah, it's a focus for us, for sure.
Helpful for me too. It's not part of our remit, but there's a lot of love for New Zealand music on Double J, and so those little touches, they count for something, And even, to talk about the label for a second, if an email starts out with kia ora, or it's wahine toa at the label, there's a distinction there that gives it a authentic New Zealand flavour that I think does count for something in the Australian market.
Cool. Do that then. Great. I think we are probably coming very close to our time, so we might just open it up for a really quick couple of questions, if we can. Does anyone have a burning question you'd like to ask this amazing panel while you have them? Hello.
How do you know when you're ready for a publicist?
Okay, the question is, how do you know when you're ready for a publicist?
Such a good question. I think it's different. It's different for different artists, and it's also probably even different within different genres. I would always suggest that, especially now more than ever, that artists have been working on their own profile and building their own momentum to the point, to the point as far as they can. If you've got a body, you've got a few followers, you've got a small body of work, you've put, a couple of tracks out into the world. You may have even reached out to some local media, new music editors, live music editors. If you've done gigs locally, perhaps you've sort of created a little bit of momentum within your market. Then perhaps it's about talking to a publicist. I think a good publicist will probably be really honest with you and tell you that, either the time is right and start a conversation, or say, it's a little early. Here are some tips. If they've got some time, they might give you some good feedback. But yeah, I think I would look for reputable publicists who are doing good work, because I think that they'll be honest. They'll be busy, so they won't want to take on an artist they don't think they can help. Publicists outside of that, it's probably a different story.
And also, to lean on to that, what does a good publicist look like? What is...
So the question was, what does a good publicist look like? And I was going to add a wee note to what we were talking about earlier about doing your own publicity, because you're going to have to. It's a great training ground for you to understand exactly the work that it takes and what to expect back from it. So you get that really great grounding, so that when you hire a publicist, you know that they should be feeding back to you about radio play in a certain amount of time and what's happening with different kinds of media, because you've already reached out and made a bit of a grounding there. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think artists just, it's so much of it now is about artists being really engaged and aware of what's going on around them. And I think the days, the olden days is how long I've been doing it, of it's fine, I've hired some people to do some things and now I can just sit back and they'll take care of it. I think it just doesn't work effectively anymore. Everyone in the team, including the artist, needs to be super engaged. So yeah, I'd look at who a publicist or who a PR agency, who else they look after, ask them, you can ask them about the last few campaigns they've worked, and get on the phone, get them to talk to you. I think if you've already done some of your own work, as Lisa mentioned, you'll get a feel for where they sit and how honest they're being with you. And I think that's just a good starting point.
And would you say it's a red flag if if a publicist promises like radio play or something, if they say, yeah, I can get you on Triple J, like for me, I would say that's a red flag. Any
Run
promises.
away.
Yeah. It's like it. No one, especially if a publicist has not worked with you yet, and you've not had any breakthroughs in any specific area yet, then no one should promise you anything. They can tell you about their plan and they can tell you about how they think they're going to get there. But beyond that, it's all about sort of trusting each other.
Tim, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, along the lines of the artists being engaged, can you talk about what the really good artists that you work with, like what does their engagement actually look like for artists here that are trying to figure out how do I even operate in the industry? Like what should they how should they be approaching it as from a business?
So Tim's asking about how artists that Chloe works with.
How do they engage with Chloe?
How do they
look like?
engage Chloe?
An engaged artist, and this is no joke, will know their publicist's name, and that is not always the case. Everyone, so you'll know your publicist's name. Either yourself or your manager will be in really regular contact. There'll be open channels of communication. It won't be silence for a few months, and then sort of like an update from either side. I'm talking about you'll be collaborating on ideas. We work with artists who are like, I saw this, this campaign that this other artist is running is looking amazing. Look at all the things they've done. Like, how do we do that? Or, this is an artist that I'm really aspiring to be like. Like, how do we build into that? There'll be ideas, conversation, like sharing you information from other areas of your campaign. So live, social, because that doesn't always flow within a team. So it's just, I think it's just really open channels of communication and a really honest relationship. Also, like I hate that thing that we did. Can we never do it again? Like just all of that stuff. I think honesty and communication really main things.
Just to sort of sum up from what we've done today.
Do we have time for one more?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I am so sorry.
That's all right.
Hello.
So obviously, you were saying that there are so many songs that are uploaded every day, and I don't even want to say that there's a competition there, but obviously artists are wanting to be heard and that kind of thing. So how do you approach, so for example, an artist that might have thousands and thousands of monthly listeners and quite a large audience versus someone who may not have that, but like how often do you give, say for example, the artist on the B side a chance or a listen? Like do you focus on numbers specifically when you are finding out like who to listen to? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah, it does. So the question is,
we have set formats across our sites which enable us to do our bit and try and champion and give back to emerging artists, because even though we know what our readers like, we know that if AC/DC does anything, then it's going to go well. But that's not how we got to where we are. We are music fans first, and we have a responsibility to help grow our local talent. So that's where our formats come in. So we have something like a Get to Know, which is a Q&A on Tone Deaf for artists that are emerging but not super duper emerging. And then we have another format called Listen to My Record, which is on Tone Deaf Instagram stories, where we get the artists to film themselves on their iPhone saying, thanks Tone Deaf for letting me introduce my new album song, blah blah blah, and we upload that and put any link that they want. It can be to their website, to Spotify, whatever. So we're trying to tap into our audience and help them get across these new emerging artists. So we have formats at play that ensure that we're not just pushing to our readers the stuff that we know they already care about, because we have targets. We have a lot of formats that have nothing to do with our targets. Yeah.
And Sam?
Numbers are part of the picture when you're trying to work out the story of an artist you might not be familiar with. But I think for me, an organic, more personal approach counts for something. And actually, in lieu of a publicist, if you have a local champion, a local tastemaker who loves what you do, that counts for a whole lot. Martin Pepperell, who talked yesterday, if I'm receiving an email from him and he says, you should be listening to this New Zealand artist, and I'm not familiar, I like his taste. I'm gonna check him out. So that counts for a whole lot. And that's free. You've got someone who loves you locally, who, you know, has a big voice, then lean on them.
Well, that's about our time, but I want to thank the panellists very, very much for sharing their secrets and insights, and I hope that's been really super helpful for you. I hold your applause and cheers for one moment, because it's now lunch and the sessions start again at 1:40 p.m. Coming up after the break here in Studio A is Exporting Māori Excellence. It's going to be an amazing panel. I'd definitely come back for that. And also downstairs in the Brick Room is Familiar Strangers presents Inside a View on Big Screen Productions and Music Supervision. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it's really interesting. It's about getting songs in films and TV and all of that kind of end of the business, which is pretty exciting also. So if you can put your hands together for our very wonderful... Thank you, Lisa.
We don't need you anymore.